Good morning. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Nags Head Wednesday, May 2nd Board of Commissioners meeting. We're going to call the meeting to order at this point in time, and we're going to begin with a moment of silent meditation. Amen. If you'll join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Commissioner Walters is not with us this morning. I will pass along the board's condolences as well. She has recently lost her mother. But that's not the reason she's not here today. Our next item is the adoption of the agenda.
Move to adopt as presented.
Actually,
Unless you have an amendment.
we have something.
I would like to request that we remove item 10 from the consent agenda.
I make a motion that we adopt as amended.
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, like sign. And we'll take that up after new business, item 10, if that's all right. This is the time of our meeting that we set aside for audience response. If you have something to say to the board, please come to the podium, give us your name and address, and we'll be very interested in hearing. We don't always respond at this time, but it is a great opportunity to speak to the whole board. Who would like to go first? Yes, sir. Good morning.
Thank you, Ronnie Sloan, President of Outer Banks Hospital. And I'm here actually today to thank you, Mayor Oaks, and thank the commissioners, and thank you, Cliff, for participating in the Outer Banks Hospital's Couch to 5K Challenge. Our first event, our first challenge this past year. I applaud your commitment to employee wellness. I'd also like to recognize Laura Gilreath, who your wellness coordinator, who was instrumental and played a key role in helping the town's involvement in the challenge. A total of 88 town employees participated from Southern Shores to Manio. 27 of your employees participated, and they also brought home the gold. So I'm here today to present a plaque for the town of Nags Head for being the fastest town, so you now can say you're the fastest town. We took all the race times of all the towns that participated, averaged those times, and Nags Head came out on top, average finish of 37 minutes, 25 seconds for the 5K. And Nags Head also continued to capture more awards, top male and female participant both. On race day, medals were presented for Beth McCullough for the fastest time among females at 24 minutes 39 seconds, and Chad Motts, who I don't think is a big surprise around here, for the fastest town employee at 17 minutes 34 seconds. It was about half of my time. The Outer Banks Hospital continues to be committed to the community and look forward to continued relationship with our residents, of course, including town employees, to maintain their health, vitality, and quality of life. And thank you again for participating in the first year of this event and helping make it so successful. I hope to see it next year's event. And again, very much appreciate Laura's involvement and your commitment to wellness and employees of the town of the Nags Head. So got a plaque for you. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Laura, can you stand up and see? Thank you very much. And I'll remind everybody, we do have the Stinky Sneaker contest coming up for the Nags Head Woods Run, which is May the 11th or 12th. That's Saturday. Other audience response, Joe? Honey Ridge folks?
Mr. Mayor and the board, I'd like to thank you for having us here. This is my first time doing anything like this, so have mercy. I want to talk to you a little bit about National Nursing Home Week. It begins Mother's Day, May 13th, and continues through May 19th. Nursing home residents are the people who nurtured our community and helped it to flourish and grow. They have been teachers, shopkeepers, business people, civil servants, parents, doctors, lawyers, authors, and others who have contributed so much to Dare County and to our town of Nags Head. This week gives us a chance to recognize their sacrifices and their contributions. This year's National Nursing Home Week theme is celebrating the journey, and we will be doing so through music. One of our events at Colony Ridge will be holding our annual junior-senior prom, May the 16th at 6:30 p.m. Students from First Flight High School, Nags Head Fire, and police departments, and possibly members of the U.S. Coast Guard will be there to help showcase this event for us. This will give our residents and staff and volunteers a chance to be the center of our attention. We invite you, the board, to be part of our celebration. This is a great time to have fun and to learn about the residents that contributed so much to our community, especially in the past. Thank you.
Robert, thank you very much, and appreciate all the hard work that you and all the staff over at Colony Ridge did. Anybody else care to make a public comment? Anybody at all? Going once, going twice. We're going to close our public comment period. Our next item is recognition, and let's see. It just so happens that we have a proclamation recognizing Nursing Home Week, National Nursing Home Week. Whereas the citizens of Nags Head, now residing in nursing homes, have contributed immeasurably to the heritage, success, and growth of our community, and whereas nursing home residents of any age or ability are themselves living history and a precious resource, and whereas member nursing homes of the American Healthcare are holding events in observance of Nursing Home Week, guided by this year's national theme of celebrating the journey, and whereas Nursing Home Week begins on Mother's Day, May 13th, and ends on May 19th, 2012, now therefore the town of Nags Head urges every citizen to honor the elderly and disabled residents of nursing homes by visiting or volunteering at a local nursing home to bring the community spirit to the residents and show appreciation to the staff who care for our most beloved citizens on our behalf. This is the second day of May 2012. And I do also want to thank our volunteers, our police and fire who are out there going to the prom. Just very briefly, if I may, Susie Walters is not here, but she had a brief note that she asked for me to read. Susie said, "I would like to thank Arlene Palmer and all of the Colony Ridge staff for caring for my mom over the past 12 years. Her passing was peaceful due to the love, care, and compassion she received during her final days. I would also like to thank Arlene and staff for the care and compassion shown to our family and friends as we said our goodbyes. We are eternally grateful." I thought that was a very nice personal note. Entertain a motion for the proclamation.
So moved.
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, like sign. The motion passes unanimously. We also have a proclamation recognizing Accident Prevention Week. Everybody can see the cars on the roads. They're getting thicker and thicker. Whereas the Town of Nags Head Board of Commissioners, employees, and citizens are committed to the maintenance of a safe and healthful workplace, and whereas the town has assumed an active role in the promotion of a safe and healthful work environment by a program of regular occupational worksite evaluations and employee safety education, and whereas the town strives to stimulate and maintain the interest in loss control and accident prevention and recognizes past and future services to the employees and citizens of Nags Head, and whereas the town seeks to guide and encourage the adoption and institution of safe work practices by all employers and employees in Nags Head, now therefore the Nags Head Board of Commissioners does hereby proclaim April 30th through May 6th, 2012 as Accident Prevention Week in Nags Head and commends this observance to our citizens. Furthermore, in recognition of this proclamation, I invite all Nags Head employees to attend the annual Nags Head Safety Luncheon on Friday, May 4th, 2012, from 12 to 2 at the Harvey Sound Access. This is the second day of May of 2012.
Move to adopt. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, like sign. Motion passes unanimously. This is the time when we recognize our employees. Let's see, Kevin Brinkley? Not to recognize, but to...
Good morning, Mayor and Board of Commissioners. This is a kind of a special occasion for me as police chief when I get to recognize a police employee for his service to the town of Nags Head. It's my pleasure to introduce to you Deputy Police Chief Tom Gillum, who we all know, who began his employment with the town of Nags Head as a young patrol officer April 15th, 1987. There are a few employees here that were around with the town during that time, but when I was looking back, I was not here, but when I began looking back, I wanted to, you know, what type of first year did Tom have? Look back on his first year evaluations, the comments. Petroleum Gillum is a bright, articulate, influential member of the police department. His cheerful, cohesive, team-spirited attitude is his greatest suit. He is a well-rounded young officer and a definite asset to this PD. That was written by then Police Chief Lonnie Dickens, but it was interesting to go back to look over some of his comments through the years. But Tom has had a very successful career here at Nags Head Police Department. In August 1993, he was the lead investigator on a unfortunate incident that occurred in Nags Head, the murder of Janet Siclari. He was a lead investigator that did lead to the arrest and conviction in Dare County Superior Court of the person that committed that crime. It was due to Tom's hard work, his dedication to the family, and to the criminal justice system in North Carolina that was possible for that arrest to be made and the conviction. In April of 2000, he was promoted to police sergeant. In November of that year, promoted to police lieutenant, and then to his current position in September of 2009, where I've had the privilege to work with him side by side. Deputy Chief Gillum grew up in Virginia Beach. After high school, he attended Western Carolina University, where he received a bachelor's degree in criminal justice. He holds an advanced law enforcement certificate from the North Carolina Criminal Justice Education and Training Standards Commission, as well as a criminal investigator certificate. He's a graduate of the North Carolina State University's Law Enforcement Executive Program as well. He lives in Southern Shores with his wife, Susan, who's joined us today, as well as some other members of our police department. In his spare time, he enjoys fishing. Anything you want to know about fishing, whether it be off a boat, pier, surf fishing, Deputy Chief Gillum is the person to talk to. I've been here for 22 years, and it's been a true pleasure to work alongside Tom. I think he's taught me a great deal. I consider him a friend and a true asset to the town of Nags Head and the Nags Head Police Department. So again, it's my pleasure to present to you Tom Gillum for his 25-year service recognition.
Fumbling a little bit. Thank you. I'll just give you a word. This is a certificate of recognition presented to Tom Gillum upon the occasion of his 25th anniversary. We'd like for everybody to get to 25 years, but it just doesn't happen that much. On April 15th, 1987, you began employment with the town of Nags Head. You are hereby honored and recognized for 25 years of dedicated service to the citizens of the town. With your consistent devotion to your duties in the police department, you have contributed significantly to the town's team effort to provide quality services. You have had a valuable effect on the well-being of the town and its citizens, and you deserve this recognition. The town of Nags Head Board of Commissioners express their sincere admiration and thanks for your outstanding performance of duty in the past and extends its best wishes for continued success and many more productive years with the town. Order of the Nags Head Board of Commissioners this second day of May, 2012. Thank you. This is it's a piece of paper, but it represents an awful lot of appreciation. So, yes, sir. Thank you.
Tom, I was told to tell you that congratulations on your 25 years, and sincerely happy that your beautiful daughter could be with you. John Newborn.
Congratulations.
I hope that got caught on tape somewhere. Ralph, I believe you've got the next group here.
Good morning, Mayor, Commissioners. I would like to go ahead and introduce David Fronius. David's making his way up here. David was hired by the town on April 9th, 2002. He was hired as a sanitation equipment operator and then transferred into fleet maintenance. And David's vast experience in welding and electrical and all things mechanical was the reason why he was transferred in. David was also the Public Works Employee of the Year in 2010. David lives in Currituck with his two sons, David Jr. and his son Eddie. And we are very glad to have David with us. He brings like I said, a lot of experience in all things mechanical. So I'd like to introduce David Fronius.
Come on. Come on, David. We're going to make you stand front and center for just a second here. The limelight. This is a certificate of recognition. It's presented to David Fronius upon the occasion of his 10-year anniversary. On April 29, 2002, you began employment with the town of Nags Head. You are hereby honored and recognized for 10 years of committed service to the citizens of the town. With your consistent devotion to your duties as fleet mechanic, you have contributed significantly to the town's efforts to provide better and safer transportation. The town of Nags Head Board of Commissioners extends its best wishes for continued success and many more productive years with the town. Thank you very much, sir. I know we put you to the trial probably on keeping things right. Thank you, though.
The next person I'd like to introduce to you this morning is Chad Forrester. Chad came to us in 2007 from the town of Southern Shores, where he had worked a couple of years in their public works department before he came to us. Chad was born and raised on the Outer Banks. He lives in Kitty Hawk. He has a 5-year-old daughter, Trinity. Chad's passion is the volunteer fire department. Chad has been in the Kitty Hawk Volunteer Fire Department for 17 years, since he was 16 years old. Again, we're glad to have Chad. We were glad to get him from Southern Shores. And so I'd like to introduce you this morning, Chad Forrester.
Thank you very much. This certificate of recognition is presented to Chad Forrester upon the occasion of his 5-year anniversary. Chad began employment with the town of Nags Head on April the 9th, 2007. This certificate is awarded as a statement of his loyal and dedicated service over the past 5 years. Chad's devotion to duties as a facilities maintenance technician has had a lasting and valuable effect on the well-being of the town and its citizens, for which he deserves this recognition. The town of Nags Head extends its best wishes to Chad for continued success and many more productive years with the town. We're awful glad to have you, Chad. Appreciate it. Next item on our agenda is the consent agenda.
Move to adopt as presented.
Has been
Or as amended. I'm sorry.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, like sign. Motion passes unanimously. Roberta, do we need time for pictures? Do you-
They're actually going to do them
They're gonna
outside.
do- Okay, good enough. Gosh, everybody's leaving. Our next item is a public hearing. It's item number 11 on your agenda. It's a public hearing to consider conditional use site plan amendment submitted by John DeLucia of Albemarle and Associates on behalf of John Harris and You Can Fly.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to begin this by pointing out that this is a quasi-judicial matter in which the board sits as a quasi-judicial body. The board's decision must be based on material, competent, and relevant evidence. In order for the town to receive evidence on this matter, those presenting evidence will need to be sworn. And so if everyone who wishes to provide information in support of or regarding in any way this particular application, if you'll please approach the clerk and receive the oath.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do.
All right, and at this time, we will begin the public hearing on this proposed vested right conditional use site plan amendment application by the presentation of staff's analysis by Kelly Wyatt.
Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. John DeLucia of Albemarle and Associates has made the vested right conditional use site plan amendment request on behalf of John Harris and You Can Fly LLC. The property is located at 7517 South Virginia Dare Trail. It's Zone C2 General Commercial, and it's also within the Commercial Outdoor Recreation Overlay District. Currently, the property is developed with outdoor recreational uses, and those uses are to remain. The request is simply to reconfigure the site a little bit. Construction of a 1,616 square foot retail building with an accessory 2-bedroom residential apartment above is proposed, along with a 2-story observation deck and the water-dependent recreational uses such as jet ski and kayak rentals, along with a tour boat. The current use of the property is zoning use compliant, and the proposed use of the property remains zoning use compliant. Staff has reviewed the proposal for compliance with lot coverage, overall building height, architecture, parking, lighting, and signage, and finds compliance in all of these areas. Landscape buffering along South Virginia Dare Trail has been damaged due to the last storm that we had. So some of those plantings have been removed. They will need to be supplemented as part of the site plan approval. The Dare County Health Department has reviewed and issued an approval letter, which is included in your packet. Stormwater measures and traffic circulation has been reviewed and approved by the town engineer. The fire department, as well as the Public Works Department, has reviewed and approved the site plan. Based upon the review, staff recommends approval of the proposed vested right conditional use site plan amendment as it's presented, with the condition that site buffering be supplemented to ensure compliance with the buffer yard D standards. At their April 17th meeting, the planning board voted unanimously to recommend approval of the request, along with a condition that if at any point the shared parking agreement between You Can Fly and Caribbean Corners is terminated, that You Can Fly notify the town immediately and take whatever action is necessary to achieve parking compliance. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. John DeLucia and John Harris are both here.
All right, does the board have any questions for Ms. Wyatt? Yes, ma'am.
Kelly, you know we have a public hearing on item 13 that has to do with the freeboard excuse me, regulations.
Yes.
And was that taken into consideration with this building height and
It sure was. The first floor is going to be located at an elevation of 13, and I believe in this area the flood elevation is 10. So he's actually got 3 feet
Okay, so that's
above.
good.
Yes.
And the only other question I had, John, was I had attended the planning board meeting, and I wasn't quite sure that I heard this, but if something should happen to the shared parking, is there adequate space there for the amount of parking that he would need, to improve?
Well, the parking agreement that's in place is based upon the number of existing parking spaces. When a use has between 50 and 100 parking spaces, you can reduce the parking for the adjacent use by 15%, which in this case equates to 6 parking spaces. Should the parking agreement be terminated, I'm not sure if 6 additional parking spaces could fit on this site, but it could be as easy as eliminating a couple of jet skis or a couple of kayaks to bring the number down to a compliant use.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions for Ms. Wyatt? Mr. DeLucia, do you or the applicant have any questions for Ms. Wyatt? All right. Does the board wish to receive any further information or evidence from staff at this time before we receive evidence from the applicant? All right. Thank you very much, Kelly.
Thank you.
All right, at this time we'll hear from Mr. DeLucia on behalf of the applicant.
Good morning. I'm John DeLucia from Albemarle Associates, representing John Harris. You Can Fly. I think Kelly did a great job presenting it. A couple of things that we are adding to the site will be an advanced wastewater treatment system to try to clean up the effluent to a higher standard. We're moving the drain field further away from the sound, also to incorporate better water quality. The new concrete that will be going down will be the porous type so that we'll have infiltration. We are developing some BMPs up near that northeast corner for stormwater for the new building. And the removal of that existing waterfront dock that was about 3 or 4 feet above the ground surface will certainly improve some views and visibility of the sound at this facility. And we're excited to do these changes. And I'll answer any questions anyone has.
Any questions for Mr. DeLucia? All right. Thank you, Mr. Is there any further information you wish to present at this time? All right. Mr. Edwards, did you wish to present anything from the planning board?
The planning board has nothing additional unless the commission has questions.
Any questions for the planning board? Mr. DeLucia, did you have any questions you wanted to ask from the planning board? All right. Thank you very much. Does any member of the public who has been sworn wish to comment on this proposed application? If not, any further evidence from the applicant? Does the board wish to receive any further evidence before you begin your deliberations? All right, at this time we will conclude the public hearing on this matter. The board may begin its deliberations. I will point out that in the board packet that if the board wishes to approve this application, there are the 3 necessary findings set forth in the board materials. If someone wishes to make a vote to deny this, then the findings would need to be made that are set forth in the board policy, and I'll be glad to pull those out if someone wishes to make that motion.
Comments? Questions?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we approve this vested right conditional use site plan amendment as presented with condition that should the shared parking agreement be terminated in the future, the owner would take immediate action to achieve compliance with the number of required parking spaces for uses. And I would also like to make the following affirmative findings of fact for this conditional use application. The applicant has met the requirements of Town of Nags Head zoning ordinance, subdivision ordinance, and other applicable ordinances. The use will not materially endanger the public health and safety if located where proposed and developed according to the plan as submitted. And 3, the uses proposed will not overburden the firefighting capabilities and the municipal water supply capacity of the town.
Second.
And also further that it does meet our land use plan.
That is consistent with
Consistent with the land use plan.
We have a motion, we have a second. Further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, like sign. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Our next item is number 12 on your agenda, a public hearing to consider granting of a subdivision variance with regard to the minimum lot width. Mr. White?
All right, again, I believe the board should proceed on this as a quasi-judicial matter, which means, again, that those who are going to be presenting evidence on this matter should approach the clerk and take the oath, and if y'all would do so at this time.
Swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
All right, at this time, we'll begin the public hearing regarding a request to grant a subdivision variance for the recombination of lots at 6321 South Virginia Dare Trail. We'll begin with the presentation of the staff's analysis by Kelly Wyatt.
Good morning. Ray Meekins of Seaboard Surveying submitted this request for a subdivision variance. The subdivision ordinance states, where the planning board finds that extraordinary and unnecessary hardship may result from strict compliance of the chapter, it may vary the regulation so that substantial justice may be done and public interest secured, so long as the variation will not nullify the intent and purpose of the official zoning map or text, and the Board of Commissioners may grant a variance. The variance being requested is from the minimum lot width within the CR Commercial Residential Zoning District of 60 feet. The property for which the variance is being requested is located at 6321 South Virginia Dare Trail. It's the former Manor Motel, which was recently demolished. As you can see, the property consists of 3 lots. It is the northern 38.5 feet of lot 24. That's a non-conforming lot. It is lot 25 in its entirety, which is 50 feet. However, that's still non-conforming as it's not 60 feet. And the southern 11.5 feet of lot 26, all of Section A seashore property of the A.B. Hoots subdivision. Traditionally, the property has been depicted as 2 50-foot wide lots. When the applicant began researching the property in more detail, it was discovered that it's actually not 2 lots, but rather it's the 3-lot configuration that you have in your packet, and that's also up on the screen. The proposal before you today is to eliminate the interior lot lines and create 2 50-foot wide lots, keeping in mind that the minimum lot width of this district is actually 60 feet, therefore the variance is being requested. Staff recommends granting this variance in that the recombination will result in a decrease in overall nonconformity, and staff finds that allowing the owner the right to develop 2 newly created lots would be substantial justice. Furthermore, staff would recommend that if the board is inclined to grant the subdivision variance, they consider placing a condition that the resultant 2 lots be accessed via a shared driveway in order to minimize the number of driveway cuts onto NC 12. On April 17th, the planning board heard this request and they voted unanimously to recommend approval of the subdivision variance along with the shared driveway access. That was relayed to the applicant and he is now showing it on the new survey provided. And I will mention that Ray Meekins was unable to be here today, so he did send a representative on his behalf.
All right, does the board have any questions for Ms. Wyatt? All right, does the applicant have any questions of Ms. Wyatt that you'd like to ask her before you present evidence? Okay. Anything further from staff at this time?
No, sir.
Thank you very much. At this time, the applicant may present evidence on this application.
Morning. I'm Mike Casey. Ray Meekins had a conflict today. I'm an attorney representing the prospective buyer of these parcels, so he asked if I could attend. I really have nothing to add. I think Kelly did a great job summarizing everything. I've done a thorough title search of this property back to the 40s. I've reviewed title, and you know, it is, as Kelly says, does anybody have any questions I could answer?
Are there any questions for Mr. Casey? All right, anything else you wish to present at this time?
No, sir.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Edwards, was there anything that you wish to present on this matter? Okay.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. As much as the Planning Board is in favor of bringing the lots in the CR district into compliance, that's going to be a long, hard process. This is just a housekeeping issue, really, because these lots have been recorded and taxes paid on them as 2 lots for quite some time. So we did think the shared driveway was a good compromise in making these 3 lots into 2 lots and making the area less conforming. Thank you.
All right. Any questions for Mr. Edwards? Does the board wish to receive any further evidence? Does any other member of the public or anybody else wish to comment on this matter? Anybody who's been sworn? All right, if not, we'll conclude the public hearing on this matter, and the board may begin its deliberations on this application.
Comments?
Mayor, I'm going to support this, but I would like for us to take a look at this minimum lot width of 60 feet. I'm not sure who Mr. House was back in the 40s, but I know that Mr. Charlie Evans plotted most of those lots from Whalebone North. Most of them are 40-foot lots. Only after he reached a certain street to the north did he start making them 50. So we have an awful lot of lots platted. If we're going to have to consider this every time there's a 60-foot variation, I think we need to go back and take a look at it. I'll be honest with you, I sit there looking at 40-foot lots all the time. The houses that were built to the north of me at one time were 40-foot lots, then they became 50. So I'm not sure 60-foot is necessarily realistic. I applaud the planning board for coming up with a shared driveway. But these people have paid for 2 50-foot lots forever. Were we going to really deny the fact that these were 50-foot lots and only one building could be built? Because what was on this property were 6 or 8 buildings at one point, with a common shared driveway of the Manor Motel. Just about, if you come further south, Oceanside Cottage Court has a common drive aisle, things on both sides. We really need to take a look, I think, at 60-foot, and this may not be the place to be talking about it, but it's what brought it to mind was looking at this. People underlying lots are not 60 feet anyway. So if somebody's got a lot that's 40 feet, are we going to deny them a right to redevelop that lot? I don't think this board is interested in doing that. And I would like to ask the planning board, from my point of view, to start taking a look at that and see if 60 foot is really the right width, considering how all the lots were platted, being 40 and 50 feet. That's my comment on this, and whenever you're ready for a motion, after everybody's had discussion, I'll make one.
The issue, I don't know if this is proper or not, but the issue, again, is non-conformity. The whole town, as far as I'm concerned, is non-conforming. It seems like it anyway, because every time we turn around, there's some issue about non-conforming lot sizes, non-conforming building size. We have gotten ourselves into that box. Totally agree with Commissioner Cahoon, and I don't want to have to climb the same hurdle over and over again every time somebody else comes back and wants to try to do something with their property. I appreciate the planning board's efforts. I think that's humongous. I don't know where everything's not conforming. We can't change that. So I guess I just hate to go over the same ground over and over again. So I don't know if we can do anything about that, but Renee makes the motion, I'll second it.
Mr. Shaw?
Mayor, I'd like to ask Bob Edwards a clarification question, if I could. And I understand what Renee is saying, but wasn't this, as I think somebody mentioned, just a housekeeping, a cleaning up of a housekeeping issue? There were, how many feet is it total in these 2 properties?
Mr. Edwards, I'm going to ask you to come to the podium if you would, because it is a quasi-judicial.
it's 100 feet in 3 properties, but they had been paying taxes on them for years as 2 properties.
Okay. Well, if I remember correctly from the planning board minutes, there is the third parcel was only a very narrow strip.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So while we may look at this again down the road, we may not have this particular occurrence again. So I kind of see this as a unique situation. Now, next month we'll probably have one just identical, but I agree with Renee and Doug that we are non-conforming throughout the town, but this was rather unique. When I heard the
this was very unique, and we didn't really have any heartburn passing this one, since it was basically making the plat conform with the way the taxes had been paid for years on it.
Right. Okay. Thank you for the clarification. I don't disagree with, but I don't know how we could do a blanket, as they come along, because I think each case will probably have to be heard on its own, on its own merits. But are you saying that currently you feel that a 40-foot lot owner is not allowed to build?
I'm saying
If it's
that if our ordinance says 60-foot minimum lot width, most of the lots are platted as 50, then we're not being realistic. Let's make the rules fit with let's be realistic. Most of the lots are 50 feet, and there is an area that's 40 feet. So why would we have 60?
Well, we may want to look at the areas that
it's all
50
in there.
foot. It's right in that.
It's all in from Whalebone North up to Lakeside Drive, up that way.
Yeah.
This is a little bit north of Lakeside, I believe.
And I don't know if this is, the thing is said enough, but we still have 40-foot lots.
Yes, I know we do. That I'm well aware of.
Yeah, and I mean, but I'm saying, this is an issue that is not going to go away.
No, we need to take a look at it comprehensively, is what my suggestion is. Are you ready for it?
Yeah.
Let me make just a brief comment. I see a difference in going from 3 lots to 2 lots than going from 2 lots to 3 lots as well.
Sure.
And suggested this might be something that if we could do it administratively, that might serve everybody well. The other thing is, if we do, when new lots are platted, I think is where that 60-foot rule would come into play. Now, I'm not sure how many new oceanfront lots we're going to have platted in the next 20 years. They seem like they're all out there. But you could conceivably have a larger area come into play. Say the Windjammer condominiums was demolished and they wanted to divide that into lots. I think that's where that 60-foot piece would come into play. But I support this one, and let's, if somebody would care to make a motion, let's go.
I make a motion that we approve this subdivision variance request with the stipulation that the planning board suggested of a common shared driveway.
Second.
We have a motion on the floor and we have a second. Is there further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, like sign. Motion passes unanimously. Item 13 is a public hearing to consider adoption of text amendments in response to the North Carolina Building Code updates, which mandate regulatory building elevation in flood hazard zones at 1 foot above base flood. Mr. Light?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. At this time, we'll begin the public hearing on this particular matter. On this matter, the board sits as a legislative body, and therefore information can be presented without the need for the presenters to be sworn. But we will begin our consideration of this matter by receiving the staff's analysis of these proposed amendments that are required by the building code from Elizabeth Teague, Director of Planning.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, Board of Commissioners. As we reported to you at your last meeting, the state building codes have been updated, and as part of the recommendations that were approved by our State Building Code Council was an additional 1 foot added to the base flood elevation for the lowest level of habitable space of a structure. What this does is equate to what people call freeboard, which is an amount of space above the predicted base flood elevation at which buildings must be built in order to accommodate changes in impervious surface and flood elevations that result over the course of time. So in your packet here, you'll see a text amendment that has gone through our planning board recommending 2 changes to our code of ordinances. The first has to do with the actual floodplain ordinance requirements that we have in place, and it goes to the definitions. And the recommendation that came through the planning board is to go ahead and scratch the older proposed definition of regulatory flood protection elevation to the base flood elevation plus the freeboard as specified in the North Carolina building codes. In other words, we're going to adjust our floodplain ordinance to respond to the building codes as they are updated, and whatever the building code elevation is required for our building inspectors to approve, that will be our regulatory flood protection elevation. The second thing that we wanted to change in our definitions actually is part of our zoning ordinance, and it relates to building height. Building height has been defined as the vertical distance from the tallest part of a building to the lowest ground elevation at the base of the building, and height can be measured using the average finished grade at the 4 corners of the building where fill has not been used to elevate. So there was a tag on the bottom of that definition that said, in any AE or VE special flood hazard area, height will be measured, and it used to say from the base flood elevation or finished grade, whichever is higher. And we're suggesting that you amend that to the regulatory flood protection elevation or finished grade, whichever is higher. That way, we're not penalizing the building heights of new construction because of this North Carolina Building Code regulation, but it would only apply to flood-prone areas. Finally, while we were looking into the definitions, we realized that there were some definitions missing from our list of definitions which relate to how we apply both of these rules, and those are recommended there. These definitions come from sort of our planning code book of definitions. One, we wanted to go ahead and define elevation as the vertical distance above or below mean sea level. Also, as you know, an elevation architecturally or from an engineer's standpoint is that cross-section drawing. We wanted to go ahead and define fill to clarify that that had to do with earthen material. In recent applications, particularly as people were concerned about this change in building codes, we were running up against people who wanted to know if they could use slab, if that counted as fill, and how we computed a slab on grade where someone has brought in fill. And we wanted to clarify that fill, in the traditional sense, means earthen material that is used to build up a property. Similarly, we wanted to explain what grade was and grading, so that there was no confusion about once you start manipulating the ground, that is grading. And this will also have some importance for us as we apply our stormwater and land disturbance ordinances. So these actually will have other benefits as well. So those are the 3 recommendations to go ahead and we're asking you to consider in order to accommodate these changes in building codes that are being pushed on us by the state.
All right, any questions for Ms. Teague? Yes, Ms.
Elizabeth, a couple things.
Yes, sir.
If the state mandates 1 foot of freeboard,
Yes.
what happens if someone wants to put 3 feet of freeboard?
They are welcome to do that, and they may even get some benefits on their flood insurance rates.
How would that affect the height of the building?
Well, we would limit their building height to that 1 foot. We would measure it from the regulatory flood elevation plus 1 foot. So if they went 3 feet up, then they would have a 2 foot. They would have to give us 2 feet somewhere
They
else.
have compression factors.
Correct.
And the other question I have, as it relates to fill, we have in our ordinances a limit on the amount of fill that can be brought into it.
We do. In the stormwater ordinance, it says that you can only bring in fill up to the base flood elevation. We looked at that as part of this discussion and decided to hold off on it for a larger stormwater floodplain management discussion, and also out of concern for encouraging any more fill coming in to elevate buildings. So what you'll see is we have not changed that ordinance. So people are still only allowed to bring up to the base flood elevation. So if they brought in fill to get to the base flood elevation, they still have to accommodate 1 foot of freeboard on top of that. Additionally, the ordinance does say that if you bring in 3 feet of fill, under any circumstances, you do have to do a stormwater management plan, 3 feet of fill or higher.
Just want to make sure that was still part of this.
So we haven't changed that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other questions for Ms. Teague? Yes, Ms. Sadler.
And that brings to mind, Elizabeth, have we made a hardship on the people who want to build from new because we have not raised the allowable fill to the new freeboard?
Perhaps, because they will actually still have to put in some sort of piling. You know, that is a choice that they make, I think, in building here at the beach, where you're dealing with such high base flood elevations. The normal sort of coastal construction that you'll see most of the time are buildings up on pilings. Where people are bringing in fill, they're actually raising the whole level of the lot. And they are creating some issues with their neighbors. There's slope that's created. There's runoff issues that are created. So I think you are wise in suggesting that maybe we go a little bit more slowly in our consideration of allowance of additional fill.
And again, this freeboard is only in the flood, in which zones?
Just in the flood hazard zones, as identified in our flood insurance rate maps.
And those are?
The AE zones and the VZ zones. The V zones are the coastal zones where you get the wave action, and then the AE zones each have, as with You Can Fly, a certain predicted base flood elevation associated with them. So for example, with You Can Fly, the base flood elevation for that area was 10 feet. So they built above that.
Well, you know, with the flood maps that we're currently dealing with, my house that used to be in the X zone is now in the AE zone. So what I'm reading in this, if I wanted to do a slab or ranch style home, I would not be able to do that.
You would need to
and that's
elevate.
West Side Nags Head. So
That's
because
correct.
of the 1 foot fill. And I understand what you're saying because I was on the board when the fill issue became a real issue, and we were all on the same page that fill is fine, but too much fill is awful, and I guess we just came to 3 feet. I think there's going to be some issue with this as redevelopment goes along and more new home construction is being considered, particularly West Side. And I'm taking Old Nags Head Cove as an example because ranch-style homes are becoming more, what do I want to say, Bob, realtor?
Demographics.
Desirable because of the aging population. How about that? Does that sound good? So I'm not warning the board, but I think this will come back and bite us before too long. But anyway, as I said, I think you've done a good job here with this. But I think the fill issue will resurface.
I think you're correct, and I've seen in the conversations we've had with some of our developers locally a diversity in opinion about fill. So there's probably much more to discuss about that.
Thank you.
All right, any further questions for Ms. Teague? All right, thank you very much. Does any member of the public wish to comment on this matter at this time? Mr. Edwards, did you have anything you wanted to add beyond the fact that it's been unanimously approved by the planning board? All right, thank you. Does the board wish to receive any further information or comments on this before you begin your deliberations? If not, this will conclude the public hearing on this matter, and the board may begin its deliberations.
Well,
Sir?
it's clearing up, it's house cleaning is what it is. So, we just got to approve.
Other comments? It's to me, it's housekeeping, but we didn't quite go far enough. We've gone from you could fill up to base flood to now you're lacking a foot. And I agree with Commissioner Sadler. It is the state imposed this change, and we've reacted somewhat to it, but you're not in the same spot as you were, and especially if you're in an AE zone over there.
Yeah.
That affects a large part of the town.
I mean, I don't disagree with this motion, because it's kind of been forced upon the state. But I do feel that the Home Builders Association is going to really come back when they see the effect of this, with the desire of more and more people kind of wanting to be flat rather than elevated. So I don't think we can fix everything, but I just want, I feel that the board and the planning board and planning staff need to be aware that we'll probably be hearing from some of the builders real soon to try to fix this again.
Just for my general edification, we cannot not adopt it.
No, but I don't know that we've gone far enough, Doug, is what I'm saying. If we're requiring you to go up another foot, what have we done to make you still be on the same playing field?
No, I don't disagree with that. I'm saying, if
But then
it's a
again-
state mandate, this is a house cleaning thing, we gotta approve it. No, I agree with you, Anna, that you're right. We probably haven't, but we still have to approve this.
And I also heard staff say that it is something that we would be looking at, and I hope we're looking at it very soon, because it does affect folks.
But I think as we have a discussion of field, we need to think about, and you only have to drive down to South Nags Head to take a look at what people that have overfilled their lots have done to their neighbors. And I don't think we need to be sitting there encouraging overfill and then having people come here to us
Looking for relief, yeah.
looking for relief because of their lots are now being flooded. I'm a firm believer if you want to fill your lot, put your own stormwater system on site, retention pond, just like any other commercial building has to have.
Well, there's
Nobody residential usually wants to do that.
there's your solution. If you want to go flat, if you want to go without any pilings, then you're going to be required to do your stormwater retention on your own lot. But like I said, I don't feel that we should penalize someone from wanting to build it on a slab just because of this new freeboard rule. So if they want to build flat, they may have to spend a little more money and do their own stormwater retention. And that may be the next place to go for you members of the planning board living here, you know?
Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to make a motion that we adopt text amendments to Town Code Section 22-32 flood damage prevention ordinance definitions and to Town Code Section 34-2 stormwater management general provisions and to Section 48-7 definitions under ordinance and to adopt the statement of consistency.
Second.
We have a motion and we have a second. Is there further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, like sign. The motion passes unanimously. The next item is 14, public hearing to consider adoption of text amendments with regard to digital time and temperature displays.
All right, at this time, we'll begin the public hearing to consider this proposed text amendment. Again, on this matter, the board sits as a legislative body in considering this. We'll begin the public hearing by receiving the staff's analysis, I believe, by Ms. Teague.
Yes, thank you. Kim Allen could not be here this morning, so asked me to stand in for him. This was a text initiative of our planning board in reaction to a new time and temperature sign that went in Kill Devil Hills. After the work they had done and the extensive research they had done on digital displays, they realized that in allowing the continued time and temperature, there still might be some things that we wanted to address locally here, particularly concerning size and brightness. So what you have before you is a text amendment that came from our planning board, which takes what we've done with prohibited signage that you ended up sticking with after much discussion, and trying to clarify the time and temperature piece. So there you'll see under prohibited signs where it says except that time and temperature displays. We realized just in terms of formatting and clarity, the easiest way to do this was as defined. Normally I would say it's not necessarily good practice to include regulations in your definitions, but in this case it kind of worked for this very specific thing. And then down below you'll see the definition that we're recommending in terms of time and temperature displays, where we actually talk about it as an LED portion of a freestanding sign that is dedicated to displaying time and temperature only without electronic advertising matter, and that meets the following criteria. And in that criteria, you'll recognize some of the concerns and issues that were addressed in the previous planning board work that had to do with, well, brightness and size. The display does not exceed 15% of the total sign area. That's in keeping with their original recommendation that came to you last time and with what's existing in town now. That the display consists of numbers compromised from amber LED on a black background. This gets us away from the complicated idea of measuring nits or lumens. What we realized is when you look at the different choices of light, the amber light, which is what we have on our ECB bank here, on a black background, seems to work very well in this environment. So that's why we deferred to that. And on the range of spectrum of color, the amber is one of the sort of mid to lower ranges of light. We also went ahead and asked for that dimming technology that we learned that now almost all LED signs have anyway, that responds to the ambient light levels. And then also that the number height should not exceed 14 inches. We want to make sure also, one more last thing was the amount of time that it changes message, and in this case it was every 3 seconds. So we just wanted to make sure that after all that discussion of digital signage, that the time and temperature display, given the emerging technology, was also addressed and carefully managed. I know several of our planning board members are here who worked on this, and I'm sure they're happy to answer any questions, as am I.
Ms. Teague, before you proceed, I have actually one question. On the very last provision here,
yes.
The time and temperature information shall not change or alternate less than every 3 seconds. That means more frequently then, correct?
Well, that was not the intent. Let's see.
Okay, well.
Shall not change or alternate more than every 3 seconds.
More frequently then?
Yes, that's correct.
I think that clarification should be made, because when I first read that, I thought that might have meant less.
That's a very good catch.
Less frequently, so.
Thank you.
I didn't notice it the first time around, but I did notice the second. Questions from the board?
So that means that you could go from 8:59 to 8:60 on the time.
Oh, right.
Is that a question?
I do have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Would this make any of the current time and temperature signs in town be non-conforming?
No, it would not.
I've seen a red time and temperature sign. That would not be allowed under this because we specify amber?
That's correct. Just over the border in Kill Devil Hills, there's a new bank with a red time and temperature sign of letters that we believe are approximately 18 inches. That was, in fact, the sign that prompted some of this discussion. And I would agree that it is very bright, and the red just does stand out. So that is not in our jurisdiction, so that would not be covered under this ordinance, but the idea was to prevent something like that from coming into our jurisdiction.
Any other questions for Ms. Teague? All right. Anything further, Ms. Teague?
Yes, sir.
All right. Mr. Edwards, did you have anything you wanted to comment on this?
Good morning again. Since the planning board got this thing started, I thought maybe I better get up here and let you throw the darts at me. This is an attempt to slam the barn door before the horse gets out this time. If you will look at this sign that's been mentioned in Kill Devil Hills, it actually becomes an advertising sign. And we do permit the digital signs and the LED signs as far as time and temperature are concerned. And when they become so bright that they are actually a danger to drivers and that they pull your eyes off the road, and when they become so bright that they are actually becoming an advertising sign rather than just a time and temperature sign. So they were the concerns that we had. We didn't want to make it too complex where we had to buy meters to check the signage and the brightness and so forth. So that's the reason staff came up with the colors that they've come up with. And it does have we are requiring the dimming technology in case in the future we do want to put nit limits on sign brightness. So they were the major concerns that we were addressing in this recommendation. Does anyone have any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Edwards?
Does the ordinance allow for LCD displays? Maybe that's old technology.
Yeah, I believe it does.
Liquid crystal.
Right.
I mean, it says you can only use amber LEDs. Is how I kind of read that.
If we could, can we go back to that picture? I did want to show, this is our local ECB bank with a compliant time and temperature sign. That is the look that is desired, and that is an LED sign, and we're trying to get away and limit anything else other than that type of sign. So that's why we're narrowing that definition. So that this would be a sign that's compliant and a sign we'd like, if someone does want to put time and temperature into their sign, it should look like this. I'm sorry, I don't have a picture of the other one, but
And
it's
when
being
you
referred
measure,
to.
when you measure the time and temperature there, to me that just appears more than 15% of the sign. Are you just measuring the numbers? Is that where I'm missing it?
It's actually part of the display there. It's the rectangular part of the display. It's a foot and 8 inches in height and 4.5 feet in width.
That's the field, right?
The
black
field,
field.
the black
that's on-
field, correct.
Any other questions for Mr. Edwards? Thank you very much. Does any member of the public wish to comment on this proposed text amendment? If not, does the board wish to receive any further information about this before it begins its deliberations? All right, at this time we will conclude the public hearing on this matter, and the board may begin its deliberations on this proposed text amendment.
I would just like to applaud Mr. Edwards, your planning board, for being proactive. I really do. It's good, and thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem? Questions? I confess I'm still a little bit unsure about whether an LCD display would be allowed here. And tell them the color of the light bulbs does. It seems like it stretches a little bit, but I'm willing to support what we've got. Entertain a motion?
I make a motion that we approve this ordinance. I can't find it.
6.
To amend Town Code Section 48-2486 and various other numbers.
That's fine. Based on the staff recommendation. How about that?
Based on staff recommendation.
And including a statement of consistency?
Oh, yes, by all means. I couldn't find that all night. I'm still learning the computer.
We have a motion on the floor. We have a second. Is there further discussion?
I'm going to support it. I don't agree with it. I'm going to support the board and the planning board in their efforts.
Yes, sir. And you don't agree with it because we think it should be, we probably think it should be more allowed. But I understand. Further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, like sign. The motion passes unanimously. We're going to take a brief recess.
I didn't go down.
We're going to come back to order and address item under new business. We have a time-specific item number 15, which is the Nature Conservancy Annual Report. That's not until an hour from now, and hopefully we'll still be here. Committee reports, item number 16. I have reports from various committees.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Let's see. I've been busy this month. I attended, I'm going to just do all of mine at once if it's okay. We all know that the Outer Banks Community Development Corporation ribbon cutting was this month, and I'm so glad to see that building is finished, and it's really beautiful inside. It houses 4 nonprofits, and all 4 of those nonprofits are dedicated to helping other people, which I think is great. They also tell me that all of the units there are already filled, you know, and that's through Hotline. So I also, along with, I know that Commissioner Walters was there, the Dare County Comprehensive Transportation Plan open house. That was really interesting. You could actually go from the bike paths map and talk to someone there, what's there and what's proposed. Then you went to the highway portion of it, which is the proposed mediums, and talked to the people that were, you know, kind of there at that station. The ferry part was, I think, the most attended. Most people in line to ask questions, but and Charlie Fearing did a great job of fielding those questions. Of course, most of them were, you know, so were negative comments about the proposed ferry rates, height, and the proposed tolls for Ocracoke, which I still understand now is on hold. The place that I enjoyed was over at the replacement of the Oregon Inlet Bridge. And I was able to talk to, and I failed to bring her card, but she's kind of spearheading all the information on the bridge. My question, excuse me, to her was if it was still pretty much on schedule. It is, and it's also encompassing, and I'd heard a lot of people say it did not, but she's saying that the plan encompasses both of those hotspots, which is, you know, where the temporary bridge is now and then the other one down the road. So that was good news. The Tourism Board met April 19th at Hatteras at the Graveyard in the Atlantic for their monthly meeting, and the new media image management campaign is working, and that is out there to change the image that the hurricane hit areas get stuck with for such a long time, and we all know what Irene did to particularly the southern end. The most immediate project that in that media campaign is radio ads in the Greenville, Raleigh, Tidewater, and Richmond markets. The other thing I thought was interesting, found out that day, that the Cape Hatteras National Seashore makes NBC's The Today Show top 10 family beaches list. We were also told that Heary has finished interviews and is preparing research questions for market demand. And we still may take a trip to see some of the other facilities for special events to help determine what we think is eventually needed for the area. Currently, the Planning Board has a subcommittee along with Cliff and the others that are on the Windmill Point Committee. We are working towards coming up with some plan that can work for interim uses on the Windmill Point site, trying to find out, you know, what will work and what won't. We don't really want to wait till the end of May, 1st of June, when Harry's report is supposed to be finished, because there are some requests to actually use the site this summer. The other good news through the Tourism Board was that occupancy and meals taxes, the collections are holding steady. The Visitors Bureau partnered with Currituck Travel and Tourism to co-host 51 group planners and trip tech planners for the AAA East Center, Pennsylvania office. This is one of the largest AAA offices in the Northeast. And they also hosted with the State Tourism Office a German tours operators and media group for 3 days. And in the same week, they hosted 5 Midwest writers, which none of them had ever been to the Outer Banks, and we were able to meet briefly with those writers and after their first day here, and you could just see the awe on their faces. The weather was good and the ocean looked great. So hopefully we're going to have some great coverage for, again, booking the shoulder seasons. The Diener Ocean Outfall Project met yesterday for an update after, I think, maybe 2 years, when the beginning of that project at Conch Street with the filter. And Ralph and Eddie V were both there, and I want to just take a minute of my committee time to let everybody know who's been interested in those ocean outfalls and what that smart sponge was doing. Maybe he can bring us up to date.
Like Commissioner Sadler said, herself and Eddie Valdivieso and I went to the stakeholders meeting for the BMP project there. And basically what we found out was the smart sponge is working, but it's not working like they thought it would. I think the biggest thing is that the bacteria, the pathogens, with the numbers that they're getting going into it and what's coming out, they're looking for the EPA and the state regulation for posting beaches is at 104 parts per million. Well, going into the sponge, they're getting readings of 16,000 part per million. And coming out of the sponge, they're getting about 3,000 part per million. So I think everybody there realizes that this sponge won't achieve by itself what they're looking for. There will have to be some other BMP measures put in along the way to help this along. The other thing we found out, basically found out and knew, because it is under one of our parking areas, is that they haven't done really any maintenance to it since they put it online in December 2009. So it's been over 2 years. They are scheduled to go in sometime in the middle of June, pull all the covers off, pull out all the sponges, inspect all the sponges, all the filters, and then replace the ones that they feel are not working. The other thing is that they did say is that on the east end of the project, in the vault, is silted up. So half of the sponges are under silt there, so no water can get to them for them to do any good. So that's some of the things we did find out. And again, you know, like the professor though from Chapel Hill told us, their marine science professor, it's not all doom and gloom. With them taking all their data over the last 2 years, these events happen maybe 20 days out of the year, so the other 345 days of the year, there isn't a problem. It's only a problem when we have a storm event that you're getting over 2 inches of rain in a maybe a 48-hour period, that these problems happen. So they're going to go in. The company that sold them the smart sponges coming down, they're going to go through it, look at it, and see if they can come up with some more other alternative solutions to help it out. But that's basically, what we found out. We asked one question we did find out, when they're looking at some of these other alternatives is, one of the recommendations being to move the outfalls further offshore. With the technology they have now, directional boring and putting it out maybe to a certain distance offshore and getting away from the bathers would help this problem also. So that's some of the things that were discussed and that they're looking at.
Thank you, Ralph. The report yesterday was very intense, and Ralph covered the part that I wanted him to cover because this is not my expertise.
Let me ask a question.
Go ahead, because I've probably got some more things for him to.
Who is responsible for the maintenance of the sponges?
Right now, it's the state. Now, I don't know what division of the state. It was supposed to be put, my understanding, under DOT, but I don't think that was ever really worked out exactly who has the maintenance, of this right now. I know there was some talk about them maintaining it for a certain amount of years and then it would revert to the town, but none of that was ever ironed out to my knowledge. So I don't know if anybody really has a good handle of who was supposed to do the maintenance.
It seems like a vacuum cleaner bag, and you got to change it more frequently than 3 years.
Yes, and that's one of the things I guess they're going to look at, just how the conditions are. The way it was designed was it would filter through these sponges. You would go in, pull out the first sponge, stack all the rest of them back in, and put a new sponge behind it and keep rotating them. But they'll find out how many of these sponges that really are usable, I guess, after they take them all out this time.
And the ones that are underground obviously weren't getting a lot of use.
Yeah, the ones that are underground were not getting a whole lot of use.
I guess the other piece is where they take their measurements from. I assume they're taking the measurements from in the vault inside the pipe. I think the health concern has always been what kind of pathogens get into the ocean. And if they measured 6 inches off the pipe and the end of the ocean, I don't think they'd find anything, right?
Well, actually, they did take measurements off of the edge of the pipe. They also did take measurements now 200 feet down either side of the pipe, and did come up with some numbers from there that were, again, unacceptable.
Did they also, sorry, and I'm asking you a bunch of questions. I know it's not your project.
Okay.
Did they have background numbers on, okay, here's what the ocean usually it is, and here's what it is 200 feet from this pipe?
They said they did. They said they did. I mean, this UNC CSI has been collecting a lot of this data, and they seem to be pretty on top of it, going out, making sure, they're collecting a lot of this data and trying to collect what's coming out of the pipe right after a storm. If it's on a Saturday, Sunday, they go out and try to collect as much data as they can. But they're collecting the data as it's coming into the vault and also as it's leaving the vault. So that's the two places where they're collecting their data.
Again, it seems like they're testing just the effluent coming out as opposed to the effluent once it hits the ocean waters. And I think I'd heard Dr. White say that they They were just looking at the concentration of it, not once it hit the body of water. And I think that's really where the health risk is in the body of water. And my understanding is the salinity of the ocean pretty much kills those bugs when about 5 seconds after they get in the ocean.
Some they do. The E. coli it does. Some of the others it doesn't. I mean, they did discuss that too.
Thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, that's okay, and I'm glad Ralph did start that, because anything that I say that is incorrect, please correct me. But it's my understanding that Diener had money for this project, and I think the first maintenance, and then that maintenance, those filter replacements were to fall to the town, which were like,
they were $200,000. At the time they bought them, they were $200,000.
Right.
To replace a whole set was $200,000.
It was mentioned yesterday that actually the funding for this project is running near empty, because some of their money was removed from their budget way back when and put down with the Jeanette's Pier project. I have a concern. Number one, this is the first time that I've known about that they're going to do this filter maintenance, and this is a job, getting down in there, getting all those filters out. They're even talking about adding another portion there, another frame portion there, to put more sponges in, and they're going to start this just as our season starts. I don't know how much of Conch Street's parking area will be torn up for this maintenance, nor how long.
We talked to them. We met them out on site a couple of weeks ago to talk about it, and the parking lot won't need to be torn up, but all the vault covers will have to be taken off. They're thinking they can get everything done in about 3 days. Pull the vault covers off, go down in there, clean out the vault, check the filters, and get it all back together in about 3 days. They said they would do that, beginning middle of the week. It will not be over a weekend. It will not be left open over a weekend. And that's what they're hoping for, that they can get it done. If they can't get it done in the 3 days, if it runs into like a Friday, then they will close everything back up, and that access will be open for the weekend.
And Ralph, did they not say something about, they were not sure that all of the pollutants were coming from stormwater, that they seem to be a bit more concerned than I can remember back in 2009 about infiltration of groundwater. They mentioned the septic tanks, and do you want to say anything about that?
Yeah, they didn't. They thought what needed to be done, that again, some of it could be from groundwater, and that they would have to. They felt like they needed to do more testing of the groundwater in certain locations along the way, along the ditch line, in certain locations where there are bigger concentration in homes and things like that, to see, again, where they could eliminate some of that. If they had to put another BMP in an area that you have a big concentration of homes, one may need to go there to help start to filter it out before it gets to the Conch Street BMP to take it out. But that was one of their other recommendations, was to do more groundwater testing in certain areas.
I'd just like to make a comment. At the time this project was started, there was never a commitment by the town that we would take over and spend that kind of money. This was presented to the town as a test project through the state and coastal studies with Dr. White, and that DOT was doing it as a test, mainly to take a look at special interests that were interested in that type of outfall. But there was never a commitment by the town to take over, because everybody was about to show how much the cost of the filters were to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
And they were supposed to be changed every year. I remember that. And the picture that they showed us yesterday of the interior, and Ralph, I don't know how they got that picture.
They went in. That was the day Cliff and I and Eddie Valvieso met them on site. They went in. The the one gentleman who was from Diener and one of the other fellows from CSI, they both went down in waders and went down in there and took pictures and stuff. And that was the day we met them out there.
Well, Ralph will tell you, it was worse than our wastewater treatment plant operation days, Mayor. I wouldn't, and with the amount of E. coli and that other bacteria that you know,
Mm-hmm.
that is
Deococcus.
That is a dangerous place to be. It's. I wanted to bring this to the board's attention because I wasn't sure who all was able to go there or would have been able to go, because I'd like for the board to consider, after this maintenance is done, is maybe asking Dr. White if she'd like to come and give the board an overall picture. And what can we also be doing to, I mean, I don't know where our septic task force, where that's going now. I don't know if we've exhausted the money that was put in the budget for helping people to, you know, have their septic tanks inspected. I mean, I don't know, but all of this works hand in hand with clean water, and I think that it may be time to take a look at, rather than this $200,000 sponge, which obviously is not removing the bad materials that are getting out in the ocean. What can we be doing here, in, you know, on our own terms? One thing I did not like that came out of that meeting, and I don't remember the gentleman who said it, but they were asking about the parts per million and why the signs were up, you know, no swimming or dangerous swimming or be aware of pollutants in the water. And he just said, well, we know that the parts per million is higher than recommended, so we're just leaving the signs up all the time.
Yeah, basically, Dina's contention is that we don't want to go out and test it after every storm event, so we're just going to leave the signs up to warn people that it may happen, not knowing that it is happening. That's why that was basically his answers. We just don't have the manpower to go out and test and then post a sign, so we just put the signs up and leave them.
Anyway,
I would submit that the greatest danger there is running into the concrete casting that's around the pipes now.
Well, that's true, but like I said, the lady, I can't think of her name, but UNC, she was adamant that it was how many meters north and south?
100 meters.
Yeah. So it's just a thought. Ralph, thank you very much. I hope I didn't put you on the spot, but I knew you'd come up with what I couldn't remember. The other thing I did was I attended with Cliff, and I'm going to let him do this under his comments, but we did go to the pier on April 25th for the advisory committee meeting. The only thing I wanted to say is they've had 294,000 visitors since opening last May. They put a new traffic counter in there to begin trying to count people without a turnstile. I always thought a turnstile was a good idea, but anyway. From March the 1st until we went to that meeting, they estimated 148,000 visits to the actual site. Now, not necessarily to the pier, but they did figure that 10% of those visitors actually came into the pier. So we're probably looking at 100,000 surfers. Because that was good weather. It was great weather in March. The part that I wanted to mention, like I said, I'm going to let Cliff tell you about the business end of it, but the management of the pier now is in two parts. The state has actually the state is actually doing the upper management level, and I call them worker bees, the ones that are actually operating and taking fishing fees and gift shop monies. All of those employees now are under the auspices of the North Carolina Aquarium Society. The primary reason that this was done was to accomplish the same work for less money, and this figure kind of blew my mind, but that the expense of operating the pier has run about $600,000 so far. Was that
salaries?
Yeah. So we were told that by the end of next year that the society has to get the pier operating and being self-sufficient, because any additional funds or supporting funds will be cut off. And I found this interesting, that the state of North Carolina has a number of their properties that are out for sale. Obviously the pier is not one of them. That's what we were reported on April 25. So do you want to mention the walk-on fee or anything that I've left out?
I've got under my agenda a letter for the board to consider about that.
That's fine. Other than that, I just want to remind everybody that May 13th is Mother's Day, and it's also the day that Bike and Bill will dip the wheels of their bikes in the ocean and take off across the country. And I plan on being there. That's May 13th at 8 a.m. at Forest Street, so I invite everybody to come and join us. That's all I had.
Thank you.
Was enough.
Commissioner Green? Mayor Pro Tem?
So our report is
Under Roberta?
under Roberta, yeah.
Just briefly, we did have a Colony Ridge committee meeting. Chairman Bob Edwards was there, myself, Cliff. They have a new roof in place, and remodeling is proceeding. They're working on the halls and doing some different configurations to hopefully make it more attractive to their guests. I always call them guests. They are undergoing their annual survey at this point in time as well, and that is why the director, Arlene, was not here today for National Nursing Home Week. So they've got a 3-day survey going on right now. But we're making progress. It's not where it needs to be, but it's getting better. And that was all I had. Our next item is number 17, consideration of modifications, updates to the consolidated fee schedule.
Okay. I'm going to try and tackle this as succinctly as possible. We have 3 actions that we're requesting for your consideration under this agenda item. The first is to add some fees to the consolidated fee schedule, and those are listed in your packet as a new fee that we're requesting. Is a requested. We get a lot of public information requests, and the preferred method of submitting that to the public is through a DVD, and this $2 cost would allow us to recoup the cost of that DVD. We've got 2 other items that that had for sale that we need to get as part of the consolidated fee schedule, and that being the Town and Nags Head lapel pin, again recouping the cost at $2, and then the 50th anniversary cookbooks, which are still selling in our 51st year, and the cost of those are $13. So that's one item that we need to get your approval on, and I can run through all these separately or get approval at each time.
Go through all of them,
Okay.
and let's look at the motion. I think
The next, there's really 2 parts to this, and I'm going to talk about the part dealing with consolidated fee schedule, and then ask the Planning and Development Director to come up and talk about the need for the zoning regulation aspect of this, and that is internet sweepstakes. It's been a hot topic across the state for some time now, and it's really come to the forefront with the recent ruling by the Court of Appeals that has determined that internet sweepstakes are legal. We've got in your packet some information One being a comparison of other municipalities and what they're currently charging as a business privilege license, the cost of those that it looks as though what we've asked you to consider is about in line with most of those, on the low end of some. And then there is an opinion from David Owens with the School of Government that talks about the zoning aspects of this, and basically what it says is we have to permit these. We can regulate their use as we would any use as part of zoning when we consider things, the impact that this type of business would have. And you can also assess a business license on these machines. The first part of this is asking you to consider incorporating a $2,500 business license fee per machine into the fee schedule. And as a part of that, we would also need to add a definition under Chapter 12 of our business licenses that speaks to what the definition of what an internet cafe or internet sweepstakes, what they are. And I'll ask Roberta to put a definition up for you to consider. This definition, Elizabeth and I went through and basically what we've done is robbed from other municipalities. This one is coming from the town of Lumberton that was recently challenged by a manufacturer of these machines in the Court of Appeals. It went to the Court of Appeals, and the Court of Appeals upheld their business license fee and their zoning. And this is a definition of what internet cafes, internet sweepstakes came from them. And keep in mind, the other part of this is we're asking you, when Elizabeth comes up to talk about the zoning regulations, to ask you to initiate a text amendment to the planning board. And she's already come up with some things that we may need to consider in zoning these. And then the planning board would come back to you at hopefully your June meeting with, we can adopt a text amendment for these uses. But I'll read this definition. Internet cafe or internet sweepstakes means a business or enterprise that have as a part of their operation the running of one or more games or processes with any of the following characteristics: payment directly or as an intended addition to the purchase of a product whereby the customer receives one or more electronic sweepstakes tickets, cards, tokens, or similar items entitling or empowering the customer to enter a sweepstakes, and without which item the customer would be unable to enter the sweepstakes. Or payment directly or as an intended addition to the purchase of a product whereby the customer can request a no purchase necessary free entry of one or more sweepstakes tickets or other items entitling the customer to enter a sweepstakes. I believe it was July 1st, 2007, the General Assembly outlawed video poker machines, machines that take money directly. The industry closed that loophole. They found a way to get around that by operating these machines that essentially you're purchasing internet time. You're not purchasing, you're not going on and playing the machine directly because you've got to purchase something else, internet time that gets you into the ability to play these machines. They are becoming increasingly popular across the state. They are, particularly in Currituck, where they are actually, some are operating as a principal building, a primary use. We have these machines presently in town because the Court of Appeals has said they are legal and that we have to permit them. We feel pretty strongly that we need to get ahead of this by permitting them, but by regulating them in the way that this board feels most appropriate. I'll ask Elizabeth to come up and talk about some of the considerations for a text amendment for their use.
Thank you. In your packet is a memo from me that has some bullet points there that you might want to think about when dealing with these. Just a correction on a clarification on the Lumberton case. The court upheld the fee and the ability of them to charge a business privilege license for it. The zoning piece was not actually part of that case, but lots of communities are grappling with handling it in terms of what is the land use impact relative to these. Right now, it's hard to tell, other than anecdotal experience and concerns from our police and sheriff's departments across the state. it is a form of gambling, whether or not they define it that way or not. And as such, it creates a target for possible crime. It also creates a loitering issue where some people will come and get on these machines and just stay, get addicted. They'll go out, they'll hang out on the street corner having a cigarette or taking a break and go back in. So there is a land use impact to some degree, but right now it's truly hard to tell exactly what that would be. In consideration of that, though, here are a couple of things that we feel like are possibilities within our current ordinance. Really, we feel like these machines should be just an accessory use. The two that we are aware of that are in town, that's how they're being used. There's one in the bowling alley and one at Miss Helen's, and these are just machines that sit there and are subsidiary to existing businesses. So that would be one thing, is to just keep them as an accessory use and not a standalone business. You can see our existing definitions of accessory use and how it would limit already the role of those machines within an existing business. We'd also recommend that you limit it to a commercial district. The C2 district is where these two machines are currently located. That's also where you're going to have sort of the compatible business for this kind of machine as an accessory use. For example, a machine in a 7-Eleven or similar type of store. And then in talking with our town attorney yesterday, he also recommended that perhaps we want to look at a space requirement within the building per machine, and maybe even an amortization period, because this will be going back through the Supreme Court. It may yet get struck down as an illegal use by the state, in which case then we'll have to probably reimburse the business privilege license that we've collected. And also that the machines would have to go away. So we don't want to create a situation where we've permitted some machines in and then they're allowed to exist as a nonconformity somehow. So we might address that as well. I'm happy to answer questions on land use issues related to these machines, and I seek your guidance as to whether or not you want us to take it to the planning board as a text amendment initiation from you.
Questions or comments for Ms. Teague? I think I would like you to take it to the planning board, actually,
Okay.
for the text amendment.
I would agree with that.
Okay.
The one thing I'd like to stress that I know C2, as part of that, I'd like to see how big C2 is at some point.
I will say, Elizabeth, how do we know that there are only 2 establishments that have these machines at the present time?
We don't. That's, I believe, what our police officers on patrol informed us of. We haven't gone through and done a business-by-business check on these, but those are 2 that we know are here. Mm-hmm. As Cliff mentioned, they're just coming back on the scene because of this court case. If you've driven north towards Virginia on the border, right in Currituck, right where 158 goes into Virginia, they've converted an old Honda dealership into just a business that has nothing but these machines. And I don't think that's what we do want to see here in town. I mean, certainly the parking issues and the other issues associated with that might not fit in with the town of Nags Head land use goals. But in terms of allowing them as an accessory use into existing buildings and existing businesses, that might not be as objectionable.
Well, I do think it needs to go to the planning board, but in saying that, this is a form, another form of gambling. And if this is what Nags Head wants, then of course that's what we need to do, just open it to any part of the commercial district. I remember way back when the state told us we had to have an area for sexually oriented businesses, and we did that very thing, and that's C3. So if we are to allow them, that may be another consideration the planning board wants to do. And also, if we don't want to become a gambling parlor, we may consider limiting the number of machines in the C3 district. Not so much to size, well, to numbers of machines. I'll be honest with you, after this came up, I visited one of the sites and kind of stood over a player, and I just had this vision in front of me that this is not what I think our town wants any of. Just as I don't think that it wants any of the sexually oriented businesses either. But there's some things that come down that you have to allow. I think the planning staff and the board needs to perhaps go out in the community and examine what's already here, and do a good workshop on this, Elizabeth. It's a big concern to me of what could happen if there are very little limitations and if it's in the C2 district.
Okay. We'll put this on the planning board agenda for their next meeting, and we'd invite anyone who's interested to come and participate.
Thank you.
I would agree there with Commissioner Sapp. I like to see limits on numbers as well as, I don't object to C3. I think that might be an appropriate district. You could have it back there with the dance studio.
Yeah.
Oh,
You know, the state doesn't want any competition with their gambling. I'd like to entertain a motion about the changes in the consolidated fee schedule.
I make a motion that we approve those as they were submitted.
Second.
And that's the DVD label pin, the DVD, the lapel pin.
And the cookbook.
I have a hard time with that word for some reason.
Just say
The
pin.
cookbook, and the $2,500 business fee per machine.
Per machine.
We have a motion, we have a second. Is there further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, like sign. And I did also hear board consensus for the initiation of a text amendment to address these machines.
And then, did that include the approval of the definition to Chapter 12 of the code?
I don't think that actually included that.
Are you talking
And I'm
about
sorry,
the definition you gave us?
Yes, ma'am. Well, we'll need to define what exactly a sweepstakes machine is in under our business license chapter.
Make a motion to approve that definition and add it to our code.
We have a motion? Second. We have a second. Further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, like sign. Motion passes unanimously. Our time specific is approaching, but I believe Aaron is here and ready to go. Sir? This is the presentation of the Nature Conservancy Annual Report with Steward Aaron McCall. Aaron, glad to have you here.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Commissioners, Town. Today I'll be presenting my annual report for the last FY11. I'll go over some of just activities that have occurred around Nags Head Woods, stewardship things. At any point, if you have any questions or want me to go into greater detail, I'll be happy to. This is all based on the Word document that you probably received by email on Friday. So, and I'll basically be going through all those sections. But I appreciate your time this afternoon. Thank you. All right, so I'll be talking about visitors, things that are occurring in Nags Head Woods, people that are coming, the multi-use accessible trail and other trail things, outreach partnerships, and then all the stewardship activities that occur from anywhere from the prescribed fire that we most recently had in those areas to just dealing with hunting and all those other issues. This just gives you an idea of numbers of what we have going through the Nags Head Woods registration thing, and we've got just over 5,000. This also tells you that we have just under 200 people that are members of TNC. They come from all over, so this is not specific to North Carolina or the Outer Banks. Generally, when we do have a lot of Outer Banks visitors, but most of those, they don't sign up on a regular basis, put anything in. But these are just some of the comments that we get through a year. And we get other comments that talk about, hey, a trail sign's been removed or things like that as well. But these are ones that I always think that really brighten my day when I read that, that both the towns and the TNC have worked to, save a place like this that really a lot of people appreciate. Just to go into, just to rehash the multi-use ADA accessible trail, it is now open. It has been open since June 2011, but these are where we received all of our funding from. So we're greatly appreciative to all the people that were able to fund this project out there. And if you haven't had a chance to visit it, it is a concrete to boardwalk hiking path. It does allow fishing. It has a handicap accessible fishing pond out there, and it's got an overlook out towards the marsh. And we're on a second phase of actually getting some funding, small funding, to do some restoration native plants out there, butterfly garden and things like that that would have labels and stuff like that. These are just some pictures of the trails. This is an example of one of the signs that we have on that area. These are also new signs that were put on the town trail this year. This is a front and back. The front has an aerial map with the trail on it. Has some of the rules and pictures. On the back side of it, most people, if you turn around, you actually get seasonal information about what you may see as far as wildlife and what things would be in bloom in the woods. So if you're not familiar with the woods and you show up for the first time, you get a little bit of information about what may be back there occurring. And based off of this, we are actually currently making a specific trail map that will be similar to what you have on there, so people can have it from there. And we're working with the YMCA to have a head trail on that side as well, because both of these trails interconnect. So that'll be coming up in the next year. These are just outreach partnerships. What I mean by outreach is just things that either TNC is doing out there in Nags Head Woods or agencies that we're working with. For example, the aquarium. Weekly interpretive thing is something we've held every summer for the past couple of years, and it's usually a Tuesday or Friday, and it's either myself or interns. We'll have a table set up, or we'll do a hike, and it's free to the public, whoever shows up between the hours of 10 and 12. Last year, we also had some of the interns that were doing the herp study back in the woods that I'll get in a little bit of detail later, but they actually, when they would go out there and do some marking and capturing, they would bring in a couple of specimens for kids or adults to hold and learn more about particular animals that were back in Nags Head Woods. This is just some pictures of the interns that we had. Last year, we had close to 5 interns working with the Nature Conservancy, and this was over a full year thing. I actually had one intern this winter working on some projects, looking at wildlife cameras and different things like that, looking at Nags Head Woods and also Currituck Banks area. So we are open to having interns there and trying to get them to also not only give them some field experience, but also to have them help us do some projects out here that we wouldn't be able to accomplish otherwise. Having the extra set of hands and some of these young students out here has been a great help. They also, like I said, do interpretive stuff. It's a good way for them to get experience dealing with the public and things like that. I found when I had an internship here, that was one of the greatest things I learned, was actually how to interact with people. It was very easy for me to go out in the woods and spend all day in the woods, but to start answering questions and learn how to interact with people was a great thing, and so they're also doing that. The two up on the top there, they're actually on about an 8-foot alligator. They also worked on an alligator surveying thing. We went out at night. We also went on to private lands that allowed us, and we basically captured, measured, and did some things. These guys will be returning. So it's a very interesting thing. We go out and do that stuff. So yeah, but this is some of the alligator surveys occurring in the northeast region. So we're looking at alligators in Alligator River Refuge on private lands, and we actually did document one in Wanchese. So just to give you an idea, we haven't documented Nags Head Woods, but it's a very interesting project and thing, and these guys will be out here for the next 3 years as well. Those two guys and 2 other ones that'll be down this summer, we'll have about 4 of them. They'll be doing the herp study as well back in Nags Head Woods. This is a 3-year project as well. We're doing baseline work, just identifying what reptiles and amphibians are in the woods still. This hasn't been done since '84, and it hasn't been done to this level. Next slide, please. This just gives you an example of some of their data when they just on turtles alone. They all had their scientific names on there, but the top turtle right there that you see, a total capture of 336 is the most common yellow belly slider. They trapped all summer long. They went to every pond they could. This is just what's called a fyke net. If you can go back one slide. Where you see that top picture right there, it's basically just a net where the turtles bump into it and they just go to one side or another. It's a hoop net. They stay above so the turtles can breathe. We check them every day. we go out there and we measure, we weigh the turtles, and we mark the turtles so we know if we capture recaptures as well. So they'll be doing this for 3 years, for the next 2 more years. So the second year starting this year. And like I said, so when we say 336, that doesn't include the recaptures that we got in some of these ponds. And it was interesting. We did anywhere from fresh pond to the sound. We had nets put out in the sound, so we did capture turtles out in the sound as well. Even though that is brackish water, you do from time to time get yellow belly sliders and snapping turtles in those areas. And we also did, looked at snakes, lizards, and all those other things as well. The hunting program, these are the last 3 years of data. It's just basically it lets you know on this particular slide of just how many active hunters we had that register and how many deer we have taken during regular season. Last year was probably the lowest in the 12 years I've been here as far as what was harvested. A lot of that really had to do with the hurricane that we had. A lot of the hunters, because of either what they sustained during the hurricane or actually how much business they were actually able to do with redoing, there was less hunting activity than I'd seen in previous years. So that's one of the things. I mean, that's one of the reasons that I think we had such a low harvest thing. A lot of the hunters that have typically hunted those times were either had damage done and they were working on their houses, or business was higher than it had been in the past. And then one hunter that usually takes a few also hurt his arm. So we have a consistent set of hunters that use these woods. Within that 42, we probably have 20 that have been hunting there probably most of their life and know those woods really well. But if they're not in there, I see a real difference in how many deer we take out of that area. But we did do the extended season. We did get one more during the extended season as well, so it was a total of 3. And once again, this is data that is turned in voluntary from the hunters. So there's possibility of other deers being taken, and more than likely there is other deer that are taken out of these woods, either by registered hunters or non-registered hunters, as it's very hard for us to really keep an idea of who's coming in with the way that the woods does back up to the community. It's like that. So we are still currently working on that South End Restoration Project. As it states, we have funding from NOAA. We've got our major camera permit. We just met with the camera representative yesterday down there, so everything is a go, and we will start on the construction phase hopefully next week when we have some college kids come in town to start building the Oyster Reef sill out there, and then we'll be contracting to get fill in there. I don't know if this pointer works, but that embankment there, this is after the hurricane and stuff like that. We did take quite a bit of a hit there, as I'm sure you guys all realize, but we'll be filling that area in this area, and then we'll start to vegetate the downslope. Get the next one. So basically, this is our drawing of it, but this is where the original road is. As you know, the town is moving the road back a little bit, and from there we will be filling the old road, bringing it down to the thing, and be planting native vegetation out there. This is where the oyster sill will be out there. This picture just shows current SAV, which is submerged aquatic vegetation that's out in that area. And that's what our restoration project will look like in that area. Next slide. This is basically, we've had over 885 hours of volunteer time to make the shell bags, which are these, and they'll have shell mats, which will go into the shallower areas. And we've been documenting both what type of fish species are in the area currently, so we'll get before and after to see if there's any diversity changes within that area. And also we've been monitoring shoreline, how the shoreline's been moving. This rebar that you see in here was actually where the edge of the shore was prior to the storm. It's now in the water. What we've also noticed is that shore has come and gone too. I mean, it's a sand, it's a very active shore. It's, so we sometimes will actually have, those rebar will actually have been completely under sand by about 1 foot and then exposed later. And so that beach area is kind of a moving beach area in that thing, but this just gives you an example. And these are just some of the things that we're monitoring and take a look at. And the reason that we're looking at this is exactly what I said. We want to see what it looks like before and want to see if what we implement has any effect on slowing down or changing what occurs out there. Not only just in biodiversity, but also in, does this slow down the wave fetch, which we expect it will in certain times, and what does it help to accumulate the back areas and things like that, or we will constantly see a migration. When you're starting to do these type of projects, you basically have your hypothesis of what you hope to expect to happen, and then you basically just got to monitor and see how things go. We consider this to be a project that we would adapt accordingly. If we were to see that something was actually causing more damage than good, we would remove it from the area, and vice versa. If we thought we could add to it to improve it, we would look at that as well. These are the prescribed fire units, the north unit and the south unit. The lower one is the north unit. This is all on the Kill Devil hillside. This was around 76 acres. That blue line that you can see right there, that is what we call the fire break. And then we burned everything to the west of that. This is the Nags Head unit. This is the southern unit right down here. That is the fire break that comes down here. Just to give you an idea, that is Paul Schaefer's house where Sarah lives right there. That is the Tillett farm right there, and the town trail comes in just right down this way. That was 103 acres. So we had just under 200 acres that was burned during the prescribed fire. This was all in the marsh communities. If you can go to the next slide, please. And this is how we burned. We used helicopters on the north unit, and we used a hand crew and a marsh master as well on the southern unit. And this is kind of an aerial part of what it looks like burned. So you see that you don't get full burn areas. Some of these areas got very little fire in it, but we had, in most cases, close to 80% that was in it. So we were able to remove some of that fuel. We are seeing it growing back. We were very pleased with actually the fire and the amount of staff and everything it took. Can you go back one slide? I know that you guys are aware that we did have some fire get outside of the line, and I want to talk about that a little bit. It was in this area, in this marsh area right here. This was in the original prescription. It never left TNC property. We monitored it. We unfortunately did not get rain after the prescribed fire, so we did have a little bit escape into this marsh area, and we did work nonstop to make sure that it was put out. We worked through the nights and all that stuff. We did notify all the landowners and everything around to make sure that they were aware of that project, what was occurring. I got no negative feedback from Sarah or anyone that was out there. The biggest thing was to keep a good line of communication up with that stuff and to work that thing. Like I said, it was in these areas. It stayed on TNC property, but it was nothing that we were trying to hide. It was just something that occurs. We monitored it. We had aerial flights after each one of these burns, and we had staff going out routinely to make sure that everything gets put out. Unfortunately, if you see on these marsh areas, some of these little island hammocks that are out here, they were able to hold on to fire a little bit longer. You have a lot of old stumps and things like that, so you get ambers and things like that. So we had to continue to go out to those islands and put water on them and make sure that they initially were out. You can get one more slide. And then most recently, we just worked with you guys once again. I appreciate all of the support from the town and the good work with Kevin. We put in just over 1 mile of fire breaks. And the fire breaks that I'm talking about are these areas. This is Wellfield Road. Sorry for my shakiness. And this is coming down the power line and coming down Gate 4 by the yellow house. So that is the lines that we're talking about. We used a mechanical removal. With this type of device, it's basically something that grinds up some of those smaller diameter fuels and stuff like that, and it opens up some of the area. It was just around 9 acres of fuel removal and over 1 mile of fire breaks. We're talking about a width of, I think it was anywhere from 30 to 50 feet based on some locations. And this is just what you get. So you can see that's coming down, and this is what we did. We opened it up. We left all the big diameter trees in there. And this basically allows us to have an area of defense where if we, were to have a wildfire situation, the Forest Service and people could come in here and adequately try to back out the fire or do what they need necessary to come into an area safely, to maneuver around in these spots in here, to control a fire. It also allows for the woods in the sake of if we didn't have these fire breaks put in, they would have to do what they call plow a line. That's heavily destructive, but that is the only way once you're into active fire that they can really put in a fire break at a rapid speed. So you would lose bigger diameter trees. You would start to get into the ground soil and things like that and get into the root mass. So this is an easier way. for us to start putting these fire breaks into effect to not only work with the woods, but also with the communities adjacent. And this is another picture down Wells Road. So this is the before, and this is the after. You still see that what you have is still the big diameter trees. What you don't have in here is some of the ground stuff, and you can see a lot of the hanging vines and different things are now out of there. That lateral fuel, when fire is moving through that and gets up into the roots or up into the crowns of these trees, can really carry fire for a while. So this gives us a buffer along Wells Road that we feel will be helpful if we ever had to deal with either a wildfire or a structural fire going one way or the other, to give us a bigger buffer than what we currently had this way. And we tried to use areas that were already disturbed, looking at the roads and the power lines, so we didn't have to put in new roads or any different new accesses. All this was paid for by ARA. It was all with the partnership through the North Carolina Forest Service. And working with both the towns, this was a big accomplishment for this area. I mean, this is something that not only that I and Kevin have been talking about, but Killable Hills and everyone like that, of how do we look at fire in the woods and the structures around it and things like this. And I think it's important for the sustainability of the forest as well as the communities around us for us to always be trying to use some of these tools in a way. The next thing for us to look at for both the prescribed fire and this thing is to put these into my management thing. These are not something that needs to occur annually, but are something that would have to be in cycles. For prescribed fires, for example, could be 3 to 7 years to reduce the fuel. So these are things that I'll start looking at with the approval from the towns to consider, just to incorporate these things, and to try to learn from them as well. I mean, I have photo plots out there that I took pictures before. I'll be taking pictures after to look at vegetation type changes, height, vigor, things like that as well. So those are what's going on with all of these areas. I think they were an improvement. I think they do add something to our fire plan that we have back in Nags Head Woods, and I also, not only from the community aspect, from the people that possibly have to go in there and fight a wildfire if we ever got in a situation like that. Excellent. Any questions?
Questions for her?
You've had a busy winter.
Yeah, but I think it's been a really productive winter back there, and I appreciate the town's support and the fire and all that stuff. And I know that was big steps. I think for me it was big steps, and I think for the towns to incorporate prescribed fire. I know every time you talk about putting fire on the ground, there is a safety concern, But I was really impressed with how well the Forest Service and the towns and we all worked together, and we were able to accomplish a lot, not only in the prescription but also when we had that escape. We worked good. Communication was well, and I tried to communicate with all the landowners back there, and I got nothing but positive response from the landowners in that area as well. But anytime that there's negative response, I'm more than willing to answer questions on any of that stuff and show people. To me, it's a lot of it's learning experience as well.
I do have one question, and it's probably going to take Kevin to answer part of it. When you were having this burn, did you find, or the participants, were they finding themselves doing a fire, a control that they hadn't had the practice before? I mean, was there a lot that was learned?
Well, I'm actually certified to burn, to be out in burns and stuff like that, and I've done them in the Green Swamp, I've done them in Alligator River, I've been on wildfires in these areas as well. So everyone that was on the line out there has experienced burning. Most of what the Forest Service crew does, and some of these people, is burning. So you actually have to have a certification. It's a firefighter too. You have to, not only do you take classes on how to do prescribed burns, what to look for from weather and things like that, how to even use equipment in certain cases, but then in some cases they do what's called a backpack test. We're actually required in our unit that we have to actually take basically what's kind of like a health check, where you have to walk a certain amount of miles, 3 miles with 45 pounds on your back in a certain amount of time, so that you can be out there and kind of work in these elements. So is that kind of the questions you're looking for?
Yes.
Okay.
So there were no newcomers.
We had one newcomer. We had Brian Booten, who's with the Nature Conservancy, who is our marine ecologist. He got certified this year. He did all the pass, took the classes. This was his first burn that he was on, but he was the only one that was new to burning out in that area.
Kevin, did you learn anything new?
I did. I've learned that Aaron McCall is probably the hardest working man in Nags Head Woods and does a great job out there. I had him on speed dial for about 2 months, and he, in fact, handles a lot, and we appreciate his work. And, of course, the certification for the live burn and the prescribed burn is something that we don't have here in town. We had to bring some of our outside resources in from the Forestry Service, the Nature Conservancy, and we've started to look at that and look at wildland firefighting as an added component at Nags Head Fire Rescue, and looking at what it might take to bring that certification to our staff. So that's something that we want to try and, as a goal for the next coming years, get that certification and maybe acquire some of the equipment that's necessary to more proactively fight a fire, as well as work with all of these fuel reduction methods that we did in this past year. It's been wonderful. I don't think in my 27 years of being with the town that we've ever done any fuel reduction, prescribed burning or mechanical reduction. So we look to further this program and maybe look at a recurring activity every several years to kind of reduce those fuels and not only protect the woods from an occurring structure fire, but protect residential occupancies from a fire in the woods. And I think that fire is a good management tool. I think it's something that we can use. Mechanical fuel reduction is maybe a little bit more off-putting. I think some people look at that and think it's not as pretty, but nature recovers quickly. If you go back out to those areas right now, the burned over portions are growing back, and I think probably showing a lot more biological diversity as well. So we've learned a lot, and just from watching and participating in the burns and working with some of our partners. And I think we'll have some fruitful experiences in the future as we move ahead. So, but thank you, Aaron, for all your good work.
Aaron, thank you as well. It's been a very good and long-lasting partnership between Nags Head Woods and the town, and we expect it to continue for a long time.
I appreciate all y'all's support. And if you want to get out there, check anything out, please give me a call. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Personalized tour.
Yeah, whatever you want, I can do it.
Bring your bug spray.
Yeah. And your 45-pound backpack.
Yeah.
Don't need to do that.
Items referred to in presentations from the town attorney.
Briefly, Mr. Mayor, just a couple of updates. As y'all may recall, since we met last time, in connection with the Sansoda case, the federal court had dismissed all of the federal claims, but the plaintiffs did file an appeal from that last week, and now the matter is now proceeding towards an appeal before the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals. We also filed our motion seeking attorney's fees from the plaintiffs last week as well. We've received a response to that, and that'll ultimately be referred to and decided by the trial court. Also, in connection with the Cherry case, we have filed, in fact early last month, we filed our petition for discretionary review and a notice of appeal in that case. We did not receive any response from the attorneys for Cherry Inc., but the matter still needs to be determined by the Supreme Court of North Carolina as to whether or not they're going to hear that appeal. So we're still waiting on word for that. Other than that, I would like to have the board go into closed session to discuss the Sansoda and Cherry Inc. cases in more detail, as well as to discuss some other potential litigation.
Yes, sir. Item number 10 from our consent agenda, consideration of 2 town DOT municipal agreements for landscaping in various areas on US 158 Bothan Highway.
Thank you for allowing that to be removed. After reading the agreements, I'd like to see us become a little bit more proactive. It talks about the DOT will maintain them for 3 years, and then after that, the town will maintain and become responsible and start including in our budget. If we're going to do those agreements, I think we really ought to consider that at the time the plantings are installed, putting in drip irrigation to ensure the long-term viability. Even if that's kind of going to be at our expense, it would make sure the plants are healthier and would make our maintenance a whole lot better. And I think we need to be proactive rather than reactive as part of those agreements. I don't object to the agreements as they're presented, but I would like to see something added about irrigation. We've had plantings put in that failed.
Right.
We've had plantings put in that had to go back and be retro planted and then retrofitted back up near Jockey's Ridge. And I just think we need to look at them more as a total package instead of, okay, it's DOT for 3 years, then it's us. I just think we need to, that's my comment on that.
And do you think that needs to be incorporated in the agreement? I would see DOT probably not accepting the responsibility for the installation of drip irrigation, but for us it would pay off over the long run.
That would be a joint venture, and I would like to see us start looking at the town will install drip irrigation. If we're going to take it over in 3 years, let's go ahead and start thinking about it.
And totally agree, and think we need to look at what it's already been done.
Where the plants have already been installed.
Well, as this board remembers, I did not approve of the original plan when this happened, and I think we've seen, because of us having to take over the maintenance, I think we've seen the errors of the way at that time, and I agree that if the board is going to do this, take over this maintenance, and this is an expensive proposition, why put in plants and then when it's time for us to take them over, they're either half dead or all dead, and then we have to go out and, because of this agreement, we have to go out and not only maintain the plants but put in new ones. So if DOT won't go into partnership with us on the irrigation system, that's something we'll just have to eat. Now, I don't know about the water. Who pays for the water the first 3 years if we irrigate these plants?
The water is fairly insignificant. The cost is installing the drip irrigation.
Well, I don't.
Water is $1.40 per 1,000 gallons, and I don't think we're going to be using a significant amount, or $1.80 a 1,000
I don't know.
gallons.
I just feel again that we continue to take on, and we need to do. If we're going to do it the right way first.
Understood.
And I don't know why they can't pay for the water. So do you need a new agreement, is what I guess you're saying.
I'd like to see us add to the agreement instead of just adopting this proposed agreement as is. I'd like to see a new work brought back.
Okay.
And just have the manager go talk to them.
Yeah.
Okay. We can bring it back and try and incorporate irrigation into this.
And what specifically are we asking DOT for? To share 50-50 in the cost of installing drip irrigation?
Yeah, and that would, to me, it looks like that would cut down on some of their costs as well. Either that, or they've got some poor soul out there agreeing that they're going to replace the plants every time they die.
And they're hand watered right now.
And water them. It'd be simpler to just make sure the water was there.
The cost of one hand watering is probably equal to the cost of drip irrigation.
I would say. And it probably would cut down on some of their contract costs if it's included that.
Drip irrigation is the simplest and cheapest way to do it.
Go take a look at what Jeanette Spears had to do around their trees recently. They've installed their own form of drip irrigation. And it doesn't come from underground. They've got bags tied around their trees that drip.
That's one way to do it. Have y'all got clear direction, sir?
Thank you, Mayor, for allowing that.
I guess not. Thank you for pointing it out. And all plants do better with water, is what I've observed.
Well, it's part of our green effort.
Yes, sir. We're green. Item number 19, items referred to in presentations from the town manager.
Okay, thank you. First, in the regards to Jeanette's Pier, the board took action at your last meeting directing the mayor and myself to write a letter to various recipients summarizing and detailing the board's dissatisfaction with the Jeanette's Piers lowering their fishing rates and become kind of undercutting some of our two private piers. That message was quickly relayed after our meeting, and the fees were adjusted back to their original price, adjusted back higher than the other two piers. So at present, Jeanette's Pier's fees are for fishing, for annual fishing passes, are greater than both of the other two piers in town. So that has been remedied, but what we've done is written a letter that reaffirms the board's position and disappointment in that original decision, and reminding Secretary Freeman of the promise that was made to not be competitive with our private peers, to reiterate how important it is to in making these considerations when adjusting fees, and then also asking the Secretary to reconsider the walk-on sightseeing fee. At the Jeanette's Pier Advisory Committee that Commissioner Sadler talked about, one of the questions the members asked was, "What is is the town board taking any position on this?" And she explained that we had, and we explained that this letter would be before the board for your approval as a kind of an alternative, I guess, to that original action you directed, because it kind of seems somewhat unnecessary now that the issue's been resolved. So this letter's for your consideration.
And just to add a little bit to that, I did draft a letter as y'all told me to do, but I also made a phone call, and the phone call bore fruit with the I guess it's the aquarium folks, and I'm not sure how they made that change without understanding the concern that we had there, but they did quickly revise it and brought it back into line.
And that speaks to part of what Commissioner Sadler was saying, that they've recognized that they've got two agencies, two organizations setting fees. The Aquarium Society set the fees for the annual fishing pier. The annual pass for fishing also gave you an annual membership to the other aquariums. So not only did you get the annual fishing pass, you also got membership into the other aquariums. And that fee was collected, because it's a membership, was collected by the Aquarium Society, and they apparently made that decision independent.
Well, and just to go a little further with that, I do applaud Bob Muller, who is the chairman of the Jeanette's Pier Advisory Committee, because members of the society were, of course, present at that meeting, and he just point blankly asked, how could this happen, that you just arbitrarily would raise one of the fees and
reduce, actually.
I mean, reduce the annual pass. And two of the members, I remember David Griffin had a response, as well as Neil Connolly, and I don't feel that they did it to hurt the piers. I mean, that was not their intent. They actually did it because they had had a number of complaints about the price being so high, and they were seeing their numbers drop as far as the purchase. And I think actually the members of the society, just without thinking, said, well, we need to reduce this fee. Not taking into consideration that this fee that's being charged is an entrance, an annual fishing pass, and that it would be lower than the other fees charged. So even though it happened, are you going to say anything more about the walk-on fee, where we are with that?
Well, the advisory committee directed the aquarium staff, the Jeanette's Pier staff, to start collecting the next day the $3 walk-on fee. That, of course, did not happen and is yet to happen. But David Griffin and Mike Rimmage both said at that meeting that they very much would like the ability and the authority to collect that fee, but that decision is made. Actually, I believe the governor's had some input into that decision, and it's the state's pier, and state people paid for it, and the state are going to be able to enjoy it free, and that's kind of the sentiment that's been passed down.
But the other sentiment that was passed up through the committee meeting was that the state owns the zoo, and we certainly don't get to go into the zoo for free, which that was going to be passed forward. The other thing I will say, that the advisory committee feels so strongly, as the other two pier owners do, that there should be a mandatory walk-on fee, that the advisory committee will not meet on the pier anymore until the fee is collected. Thank you, Cliff, for letting me.
Thank you.
I do have a suggestion for the letter that we've got, and that's to copy it as well to both our representatives that are in the legislature and the speaker and the president pro tem, just to make sure that it does reach the leadership.
Okay.
Motion to approve the letter, y'all?
So moved.
We have a motion.
Second.
We have a second. Further discussion?
Were we hopeful of not having to burden our legislators with this issue in the hopes that it could be resolved the way that the town would like to see it resolved? Do you recollect what was said at that meeting about a letter from Nags Head to incorporate the members of the legislature?
Other than David Griffin's concern that because there's consideration about either selling or privatizing or leasing out the operation of some of these facilities, that I think it was his plea, the less vocalized the better.
Well, I just throw that out there because I could not remember if there was a plea to wait. But, you know, again, we are upon the season. The season is upon us. And there is local community concern now that it is hurting people that it shouldn't be hurting. That we don't have an equal playing field here, so maybe the letter should be sent to anyone that has any concern, I guess.
I feel like we are obligated to speak up on behalf of our private pier owners. That they've been in Nags Head for an awful long time, and they're looking for a fair playing field, and that's what the state promised us.
Yeah. Well, we've probably given Secretary Freeman's office plenty of time to get on that equal playing field, so I don't have any problem with including the others if the board wants to do so.
Further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, like sign. Motion passes unanimously.
The other on this same topic is for some direction from the board. That is part of this discussion, in both Nags Head Pier owner Andy McCann and Outer Banks Pier owner Gary Oliver were both at the Jeanette's Pier Advisory Committee and shared some concerns about being able to compete with the state pier, and use has been something that's been discussed both here at this meeting and previous meeting in Jeanette's Pier Advisory Committee. And presently, of our 3 piers, 2 are located in the CR district, and the piers are allowed through a conditional use, and one of the uses that's permitted as an accessory, there's various different types of accessory uses. Restaurant being one. Both Dave Griffin and Mike Rimmage have said adamantly that there is no desire, intent, or interest in the state operating such a facility. But again, I think it's on the table, and it's clear through some of the discussions at the General Assembly is that the privatization. If someone else were to come in, the state owns it, someone else were to come in and operate it, would a restaurant be desired? And it is permitted. My question for the board is I've somewhat wondered, you have 3 piers in town, 2 are in one district, 1 is in the other. If there's the ability to regulate piers together collectively instead of separately, and is this some discussion that maybe at the planning board level and staff to come back to the board with what are the desired uses associated with piers?
Mayor, I'd like to send this to the planning board for their discussion and have them bring back some recommendations. as to the future of restaurants on piers, while considering that Andy has a great little restaurant on his pier, Gary has food on his, but there would be an unfair advantage should Jeanette's just decide to change, and they could change at any whim of the legislature at this point in time. And I'd like to see the planning board study this and bring it back.
I agree with Renee, and I would not want to do, I think Jeanette's Pier and the Nags Head Pier in one zoning district and the Outer Banks Pier in a different zoning district. So in doing this, we don't want to make anyone non-conforming.
Correct.
That's already out there. So the planning board would be tasked with other means, other ways, and I think, and I wish Mr. Edwards was here, but I think again the planning board would be very proactive in doing this because, again, it was our understanding in the beginning that there would be no restaurant on the pier. So, and as Cliff said, there's no intent from the present management, but that's not to say that Smith Corporation couldn't come in and apply for a conditional use for a restaurant at the pier, and quite frankly, there is nothing there to prevent that. And again, there are sufficient restaurants in the area. So yes, planning board, Elizabeth I know is listening. Planning staff needs to keep on going.
Mayor Pro Tem, consensus there?
Oh, yeah, well, I've been there all along, yeah. I mean, I don't know what we could do about it. It's one of those issues that we need to look at very closely. Let the planning board take it and run with it.
I do hear consensus from the board to put this to the planning board and ask for some recommendations.
Thank you. The only other item is a request for closed session to discuss the acquisition of real property located at 3005 South Croatan Highway, and that's the Dowdy Amusement Park on 158.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Commissioner's agenda, Commissioner Cahoon?
Not yet for me, thank you.
Okay.
I thought you had just told me, well, that's under it's on the agenda for an update.
It's that one's under the Board of Commissioners
Right.
agenda, so we'll ask for that one. Commissioner Saddle?
No, I had my half hour. Thank you very much, Mayor.
Yes, ma'am. Mayor Pro Tem?
No. And when we get to mine, it'll be brief.
Yes, sir. Well, then we're at that point in time. Then we'll do the stormwater drainage update first, if that's all right.
The project is still proceeding in Vista Colony. Probably about 2/3 of the way done with the pipe work. And shortly after that, they will do the swells, and hopefully we'll see that completed by the end of this month. They have until the middle of June to finish that project, but they're pushing to try to go ahead and get it done by Memorial Day. But that's where that project's at.
Thank you so much for the update, and I'm sure everybody would be happy to hear that.
Commissioner Romali? Excuse me, Mayor Pro Tem Romali.
What you have in front of you is the proposed 2012-2013 operational budget for the GovEd channel. The committee has already approved it for your edification to bring back before the Board of Commissioners to see if they have any issues. It's very briefly, there's no increased request by any of the existing members. So I'm just looking for your all's approval to your blessing to send it back.
Questions or comments from Mayor Pro Tem?
And I think that's the same, excuse me, amount of money, Doug, as was last year.
Yes, ma'am.
You're doing a much better job, by the way. Roberta, I need to be addressing
Yeah, give it to
your subcommittee staff, Doug. No, they are. Channel 20 is doing a much better job of making sure that the tapes are on to the conclusion.
There is, again, I mean, I hate to bring up this issue, but we do have new members now. Some of the towns are not new members. Some of the towns are coming online to be on to broadcast their meetings. So therefore, I told the mayor we have to be more diligent, even though we are senior to the rest of them as far as being have televised. We have to be real conscious of our times, because I think eventually we might have an issue with conflicting presentations. Now it hasn't come to that yet. I'm just saying, maybe it'll be after my tenure, but it is a possibility. And along with that, the only other thing is that Roberta has been working diligently with them, going over into training in the use of all the telemetry to do her being able to actually do her own presentations, the camera work and all that. We will be coming back to look for about $300 next time for lighting, for the electrical work. I'm sorry, electrical work. That's what it is, electrical work. But that's not that. A makeup artist. Yeah. Makeup room.
So are you saying that with more coming on that channel, Doug, that we may have to shorten our time, or?
There may be that issue, yes.
Oh, good heavens, I'll never make it. That goes by half hour.
That's all I have.
Thank you, sir.
I need approval. I mean, we need to approve the budget.
Entertain a motion on the budget for the
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, like sign. Motion passes
And I would
unanimously.
be wrong, but not asking Roberta if she has anything she wants to do.
Our next item is number 23, discussion of new sandbag rules. We drafted two letters, gave you a choice, and they were sent out by email. Just wanted to open that for discussion. There is some time on sandbags, I believe, that we are not under the gun on presenting comments.
Could I ask you a quick question?
Yes, ma'am.
And I read both of the letters. I'm more partial to the lengthier one. I don't have it with me. But what happens to people who now have beach in front of them, they have sandbags under their home, and there they are? So currently, what are they in violation of? Or are they?
My understanding, and please correct me, after a nourishment project, sandbags that are uncovered have to come out, have to be removed. Now the question becomes one of enforcement.
And who is out there to enforce this?
It's the state of North Carolina's rule, so the state of North Carolina is charged with the enforcement.
Through whom?
North Carolina Division of Coastal Management.
So I hope everybody that's asked me that question is listening, because there are some homes there, and there are some homes there that would like to sell, and they're asking, why can't I just put the sand all under there and put clay on it, or gravel, or make it really nice looking, because I have yards to the beach. And I don't have an answer, because we didn't make them take them out. We kept extending their life expectancy. And now that the house is no longer in peril, I agree they need to come out. But if we don't have an organization, Mayor, that's going to enforce that rule, where do these people stand? I mean, where are they? Are they legitimate or illegitimate? Do you have to disclose that they are illegal? And what can be done to make them legal? We're kind of in a quandary, the real estate picture of this. So maybe we ought to spend a little more time on the sandbag issue. Maybe we can get some more definitive answers before we proceed along with the letter.
Proposal is to lengthen the time of the bags, and they don't want to take enforcement.
And allow them to be done twice on one property, which has never been allowed.
Okay.
Trying to be more flexible.
So if you lengthen the life of the bag to another 8 years, or extend, you know, if they were up now, does that mean then that person A could go in there and cover up underneath the bag, I mean, cover the bags and put nice gravel on it? And
That's not what the rule states. The rule says covered and vegetated.
How can you vegetate underneath the house?
They were never intended to be underneath the house.
But
they
but
were
they
never meant
well,
to
then
be
you know,
installed underneath the house.
not knocking the organization that you have been so long and hard working on, Renee, and I mean that sincerely. Why were they not, what do you do with the police? Are the, you know, you have a building inspector that goes out when the electrician is up to a point or the plumber's up to a point and they say, okay, keep going. Well, where were those guys, enforcement guys, when the people started putting them under the houses?
I can't answer that for you.
Well, as I said,
Because the staff has been directed to have the bags removed, and that has not happened.
I just don't know that our letter is the right letter at the right time, Bob. I don't know where, I don't know what to suggest as an interim, unless the town's going to take it upon ourselves to go down there and say, get them out.
I don't think that's what your letter overall meant. It was talking about not allowing sandbags, period, summit to be issued in Nags Head.
And I'll confess, y'all, Roberta wrote the longer letter, and I wrote the somewhat shorter one that was somewhat more direct, that said, no, these are bad public policy. And the problem is you're lengthening the time. Well, I'm not sure I've seen a couple of them come out, but the vast majority go in and they don't ever come out. And it creates it's created real issues for us. And I think that same situation would happen in other communities. It's just a little bit further down the road.
Well, maybe this short letter should say, not only not do this extension, but also come up here and get them out.
One of those paragraphs said that to
I didn't, it did. It did?
It did.
In the short letter?
It did.
I think it's sort of the last line of the next to last paragraph. Increased enforcement on the existing rules.
Well, it said that the law requires their removal, but the law's always required their removal at some point in the future. So you're saying,
consider increased enforcement on the existing rules is what I think that last, the finishing touch.
well, I don't like the word increase, just consider enforcement.
Are you just letting us know? Are you just letting us know about this letter, or are you just?
I'm asking for y'all's consensus
want
on the comments. Is this the way the board feels about this issue? Because I think we are presenting these comments as the board of the town of Nags Head, not as others.
Well, I think the consensus is everybody agrees we don't like sandbags. That's there. What good the letter's going to do is absolutely nothing.
I'm just not so sure that I think that it is in the wisest decision to force owner of a home to remove bags from under that home. I don't know what that would do to the integrity or the structure of the home. What if the sandbags?
Well, I hope the sandbags aren't what's holding it up.
I'm just saying the sandbags could well be holding it up. That's my only issue. But I don't want to lengthen or permit or do anything there. It's the removal of some of these bags where they are that presents a problem with me. And do you want Elizabeth to ask the planning board to to look at this at all?
I don't think this is a planning board issue. I think this is strictly a board of commissioners issue, quite honestly.
We have looked at it for years.
That's right.
The issue is the issue. Do the best we can and move on, because that, I mean, there's no enforcement. There is no enforcement power out there. Absolutely none. If you don't do it on your own, if we don't do it, like again, it's like beach nursing. If we don't do it, nobody's going to do it, and we can't make them do it.
So, the results of sending this shorter letter then is going to get us where?
It's just another. It is another. As far as this is mine now. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it's just another avenue of letting them know of our disfavor with the whole operation.
I think that's great, and I also think though that the people that are trying to sell the houses have sandbags. They need to disclose to prospective buyers that this is a non-conformity. They are in non-compliance with state rules, and that the people buying it should be made aware of that they're looking at purchasing a property that is in violation and that enforcement action could happen at any time.
And to me, it's greater than a non-conformity. You allow non-conformities to stay.
It's an illegality.
Yeah, yeah. It's definitely a material fact.
You know, and it's, I mean,
And I think when they're asking, I think the Coastal Resources Commission is actually the body that's going to be requesting comments on the idea, the concept of lengthening the time period and allowing a redo on a property which they've never allowed before. I think we've had the most experience with sandbags of anywhere in North Carolina, and it's cost us an incredible amount of money and legal fees. But I think they should welcome our comments because we've had the experience. We've been where the rubber meets the road.
The commission will welcome it. This idea of allowing this redo and extension is not coming from the commission, it's coming from the staff. It really just doesn't want to deal with the enforcement issue.
When you say it's coming from staff, what staff is that?
The Division of Coastal Management, which is entirely different than the Coastal
Resources
There are
Commission.
two separate agencies. One is a state agency and one is a state board.
Okay, and the state agency is the one that it kind of wants to allow the redo.
That's correct.
Because of the enforcement?
That is correct.
Would that be because of monetary constraints?
I would say it's monetary. I would say it's political pressures coming down to them from proposed rulemaking or rule changes in Raleigh, or legislative changes, I would say, but it's a variety of reasons. But the commission has asked staff to please enforce the rules and get rid of them. And staff has, for many reasons, lack of staff due to budget cuts and so forth.
So we could expect from this several things. Nothing, or possible no more and no extensions, but what's there is going to be allowed covered up. Or extensions, and we appreciate your letter, but we're going to extend. So what else could we get?
I mean, I think if we feel this way, we should pass the comments forward to the Coastal Resources Commission, and maybe they won't extend and won't allow seconds, and maybe they'll even increase enforcement or enforce.
Reaffirm what direction's already been given. I personally would like to see you send a letter.
I have no problem with sending a letter.
Mr. Sadler, are you
Well,
okay with that?
I'm 99% there. What I would really like for them to do is probably not going to happen, but that is no extensions, no more sandbags. However, those under the houses, cover them up and let them stay. I mean, you're not going to make them take them out, so, do something to make these homes legal or continue illegal. If they continue illegal, come down here and forcibly give them fines every day or whatever, but get them out. Don't just sit in limbo for as long as I've been on this board. So that's my only, I mean, the letter, I'm fine. I'm sure Renee can express my feelings at some meeting or another.
When it comes forward to the commissioner, I'm sure we will.
Thank you.
Okay, I do hear consensus on the short letter. We had a request for closed session to consider GS 143-318.11A5 Dowdy Amusement Park property at 3005 South Croatan Highway, and an update on litigation GS 143-318.11A3.
The Sand Soda and Cherry Inc. litigation.
Yes, sir.
As well as other potential litigation.
Entertain a motion to go into closed
Make
session.
a motion, we go into a brief closed session.
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, like sign. We're going to come back into open session after a brief closed session. I'll ask our attorney, Mr. John Lighty, to report out from that closed session.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The board did discuss the two pending litigation matters that we discussed, or that we went into closed session to discuss, as well as one potential litigation matter, but no specific directions were given to counsel with respect to those matters. The board also discussed the property that it went into closed session to discuss, but no action was taken on that, and no other actions were taken in closed session.
Thank you, sir. Hearing no other business to come before us at this time, we're going to recess till our May 16th mid-month meeting at 7 o'clock, and we will have our budget presentation at that point in time as well.
Budget workshop on May 9th.
Budget workshop on May 9th.
CFP.
Thank you. May 9th.
It's May
So-
the...
And what time is that, sir?
2 to 5. Isn't
2
that
to 5.
national
2 to 5.
safety
Carolyn,
evening?
remind me, will you?
May 16th. It's something at 6:30.
We're going to stand in recess.